I remember the day the ground beneath my feet began to crumble. It wasn't a sudden earthquake or an explosion in the middle of the night. It was more like hearing a faint crack in the walls of my life and gradually realizing the entire foundation was buckling. Looking back, it might have been a simple comment from my now ex-wife, Clarissa, about needing more time away, or maybe a small lie she told about working late. In the moment, these details slipped by with just a passing worry. It's only in hindsight that I see how they were early warnings of a storm heading my way. When we first married, Clarissa and I seemed so happy. We lived in a quiet suburban area filled with old oak trees, winding sidewalks, and a promise of a calm future. We had 2 children, Logan, my introspective 8-year-old who sketches comic heroes whenever he's nervous, and Brianna, a bright-eyed 6-year-old who sings pop songs at the top of her lungs every morning. They were, and still are, the lights of my life, and for a while it felt like we were a perfectly normal family. Sure, Clarissa and I bickered now and then, who doesn't? But I honestly believed we could stand strong against any test of time. Little did I know, tests sometimes arrive in forms you never expect. Clarissa started coming home late. At first, she blamed parent-teacher organization events or fundraising dinners at the community center. She excelled at volunteering, so I assumed she was genuinely busy with local charities. Gradually, her explanations got murkier. One Thursday, she claimed a friend needed moral support. The next week, she said she had to help plan a neighborhood festival I'd never heard of. In my head, I excused the inconsistencies. I was busy, too. Working at a local Naval Heritage Museum was no small feat. It demanded a lot of mental energy and odd weekend events. I told myself, she's an adult. She has her own life. Trust her. Yet trust can be a one-way street if someone's determined to drive the other way. By the time I noticed Clarissa texting more frequently, always glancing over her shoulder to see if I was watching, I felt the first twist in my gut. It's amazing how you can sense a spouse pulling away in the simplest gestures. A whispered phone call behind a closed bathroom door, a sudden new lock screen on her phone. When I confronted her gently one night, "Hey, you've been out a lot. Everything all right?" She just forced a tired smile, patted my arm, and said, "Everything's fine, Andrew. You worry too much." A half-hug later, she was walking upstairs, leaving me alone in the dimly lit hallway. A more suspicious man might have checked her phone or followed her after work. I did neither. I tried to trust her. Maybe part of me already knew. Maybe I was protecting myself from the inevitable heartbreak. After all, once you open that door, once you confirm your doubts, you can never retreat into the bliss of denial again. Time blurred. Days melted into each other. I recall one evening, coming home from the museum exhausted after coordinating an exhibit about World War II submarines, only to find Clarissa absent. The house felt too quiet, except for Logan's pencil scratching. He was drawing some cartoon battle scene at the kitchen table, wearing an oversized t-shirt. Brianna was upstairs in her room, humming a tune from her favorite pop star. I tried calling Clarissa. No answer. By then, suspicion was clawing at the back of my mind. A week later, a friend of ours, someone from my social circle, Toby or Derek, I don't remember exactly who mentioned seeing Clarissa in a different part of town at an odd hour. When I asked her about it later, she got defensive. "Do you think I'm lying about volunteering? You've never minded my charities before," she snapped. Something in her eyes flickered that night, a glint of anger and fear. Or was it guilt? I remember that expression so vividly because it was the first time I truly felt we were on different sides, as though the woman in front of me wasn't my companion anymore, but a stranger with secrets. A couple of days later, she forgot to pick up Brianna from her dance class. My daughter, tear-streaked and confused, ended up waiting with the instructor until I raced across town to get her. Clarissa apologized stiffly that night. She said she'd lost track of time, but never admitted what she was doing. We had an argument, tense, quiet, each of us trying not to wake the children. She gave me the silent treatment afterward, a show of her frustration or shame. I couldn't read her. That's what tore at me the most. I used to know this woman's every expression. Now she was locked behind a wall of secrets and resentment. The final unraveling began on a Tuesday, of all days mundane, overcast, the sky threatening to rain but never following through. I was reorganizing some old relics at the museum, half lost in the swirl of daily duties when my phone buzzed. On the other end, Toby's voice was tense. "Andrew, I don't know how to say this, but you should come down to the Gableton Cafe if you can." Toby was the last person to call me midday unless there was a real emergency. I remember my heart pounding like a drum against my ribcage. I asked him, "Is it about Clarissa?" He hesitated. That hesitation screamed the answer loud enough. Without waiting for more details, I rushed out, telling my boss I had a personal crisis. The drive felt surreal, my mind cycling through denial, rage, fear, and heartbreak all at once. I pictured a million scenarios, each one worse than the last. Pulling up to the cafe, I expected drama, maybe Clarissa screaming at someone or a fight with an acquaintance. Instead, the scene was strangely calm. Toby stood on the sidewalk, his hands shoved in his coat pockets. He looked at me with an apologetic grimace, then gestured inside the cafe's large front window. I approached carefully, half wishing I could vanish. Through the glass, I spotted Clarissa in a back booth. She wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, sat across from her. He was leaning forward, talking intimately. Clarissa's lips curved in a playful smile I recognized from our early dating days. She glanced at him as if he was the only person on earth. My stomach lurched. The pair looked close, too close. Her hand rested on his wrist. It was an unambiguous gesture, a quiet sign of intimacy. I felt my legs ready to give out. Toby placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I didn't know how else to tell you." I just stared through that glass until it felt etched into my memory. Clarissa's face glowing with an excitement she hadn't shown me in months, maybe years. There was no violent outburst or big confrontation that day. Instead, I turned around, got back in my car, and drove home. The tears came later, behind the bathroom door, where I locked myself away so Logan and Brianna wouldn't see. That was the beginning of the end, the first undeniable proof that Clarissa was living a lie. The days that followed would break every illusion I had about marriage, loyalty, and trust. But if I'd learned anything from my job cataloging the hidden artifacts of war, it was that truths eventually surface no matter how deeply you bury them. And so I prepared, in my own quiet, methodical way, for a battle I never imagined I would fight. I've always believed that life's greatest tests come when you least expect them. After seeing Clarissa with that stranger in the cafe, I felt my world tilt off its axis. Yet life doesn't halt in sympathy. Children still need dinner. Jobs still require your presence. Bills keep arriving in the mail. So I slipped into a strange autopilot mode, simultaneously furious, gutted, and determined to hold everything together. The night after I discovered Clarissa's betrayal, she didn't bother coming home until nearly 11. I sat in the living room with all the lights off, parted blinds letting in only a sliver of moonlight. As the front door clicked open, my heart banged in my chest. I wanted to confront her, yet fear and heartbreak held me pinned to the couch cushions. She tiptoed in, probably thinking the kids were asleep and me as well. Her phone's screen lit her face ghostly white in the dark. For a moment she paused as though she sensed my presence. Then she hurried upstairs. That evening marked the first time I realized we'd become two strangers living under the same roof. I didn't speak to her. I didn't want to break down or lash out in front of Logan and Brianna. I convinced myself, one more day, I can last one more day. By morning, I'd swallowed my heartbreak and resolved to keep functioning for the kids' sake, if nothing else. During that period, Toby and Derek became my lifelines, whether they knew it or not. Toby had always been a keen observer, the sort of friend who picks up on micro-expressions and can read a room in seconds. He was the one who noticed Clarissa in that cafe. Derek was more laid back, a father of 3 who believed that any problem can be solved with a good weekend barbecue. Both approached my situation differently. Toby quietly made sure I was holding up, while Derek tried to lighten the mood with dumb jokes about how wives sometimes go through phases. Still, I appreciated them. I needed the distraction, anything to keep from dwelling on Clarissa's betrayal. I also had work at the Naval Museum. If I immersed myself in reorganizing historical displays, maybe I could push away the image of Clarissa leaning close to that man. Some days I dived so deeply into the archives that I'd lose track of time. old letters from World War II sailors, bits of submarine instrumentation half-rusted with age. These objects became my refuge. They reminded me that people in the past had faced horrors greater than any heartbreak, and somehow persevered. If they could do it, so could I. Still, home life was no picnic. Logan would ask, "Hey, Dad, is Mom home tonight? Or where's Mom? She promised to help me with my science project." I never had an answer that didn't taste like a lie. Some nights I'd attempt to call her, only to be sent straight to voicemail. Brianna, always so perceptive, would say things like, "Mommy looks sad lately," and I'd force a smile, telling her it would all be okay. Inside, my mind churned with doubts and regrets. I began suspecting Clarissa's affair. The word stung like a wasp's sting had been going on much longer than I realized. In the weeks that followed, I discovered small details that I'd once overlooked. Clarissa's phone bill showed late-night texts to unknown numbers, a receipt for a dinner meant for two at a fancy Italian place I'd never heard of, a hotel key card hidden in her jacket pocket. Each revelation felt like stepping onto a freshly laid landmine. I hated the surge of bitterness rising in my chest. I resented her for turning me into someone who snoops around. That wasn't me, or at least, it never used to be. One evening, Toby suggested we grab drinks at a local sports bar. Derek joined us and we commandeered a booth near the back. Over cheap wings and a pitcher of beer, I finally let some of my anger show. Derek asked, "Any update on Clarissa?" I told them everything. The new revelations, the inconsistencies, the humiliating sense that she was flaunting it now. Toby sipped his beer carefully and said, "What's your plan, Andrew? You can't just let her walk all over you." Plan? That word clanged in my head like a loose anchor chain. All I'd been doing was surviving day by day. I hadn't even begun to think of actual next steps. Divorce was a possibility, sure, but the thought scared me. I grew up believing marriage was sacred, something you fought for. But there I was, with a wife who clearly didn't share that sentiment. The idea of a custody battle for Logan and Brianna twisted my stomach into knots. As Toby and Derek exchanged glances, I realized it might be time to accept the reality. My marriage was already gone. I left the bar that night in a fog, stepping into the parking lot's flickering fluorescent lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Clarissa. "Don't wait up. I'll be late." No explanation. No apology. Something in me snapped. My heart pounded as I typed back. "We need to talk about the kids and living arrangements. This can't go on." I sat in my car for a long time, phone in hand, but no response arrived. Surviving solo, I learned, is equal parts exhausting and liberating. I took on more responsibilities with the children helping with homework, packing their lunches, tucking them in at night. Strangely, that part felt good, like I was stepping into the father role I always wanted to be. But a shadow always loomed, Clarissa's ghost-like presence drifting in and out of the house, barely acknowledging me. One Saturday, she returned in the early afternoon, hair disheveled, clothes slightly rumpled. I was folding laundry on the living room couch while Logan watched cartoons. She paused, as if about to speak. Then her gaze shifted to the floor. Without a word, she hurried upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard the shower running. My hands clenched into fists around a shirt. This was my life now, a parade of humiliations I had to endure for the sake of my kids' stability. Yet beneath the hurt, a quiet determination began to form. If Clarissa thought I'd just let her trample over me, she was mistaken. I started documenting everything. Times she came home, phone calls she ignored, receipts I stumbled upon. I didn't know exactly why, but my mind whispered that I should protect myself. If I needed to stand up for my children or my own sanity in a court or anywhere else, I'd have proof that her neglect was real. A part of me despised this new role of playing detective in my own marriage. But I'd read enough war diaries to know that defense is often the first step to turning the tide. Over time, surviving solo became my new normal. I rose early to fix pancakes for Logan and Brianna, helped them scramble out the door, then ran to the museum for a day of archiving and visitor tours. Evenings, I cooked dinner, supervised bath time, and read them stories while Clarissa's presence hung uncertainly, like a phantom in the hallway. Sometimes she'd show up, sometimes not. My love for her was tangled with rage at her deceit. The only reason we were still under one roof was convenience her refusing to leave. me unsure how to forcibly remove her without traumatizing the children. Yet in those small daily routines, I found fleeting solace. I was stepping up to be both mom and dad in my own stumbling way. Toby and Derek offered unwavering support. They'd come over with pizza or bring their kids for playdates, giving me and my two a sense of normalcy. On the outside, it might have looked like I was handling the separation calmly. Inside, I was a mess of frayed nerves teetering on the brink of heartbreak. But each day I survived brought me closer to the moment I'd confront the truth and decide once and for all what to do about Clarissa's betrayal. And I knew that moment was approaching, a final reckoning that would either shatter the remaining pieces of my heart or give me the push to finally break free. When a marriage goes sour, bitterness has a way of creeping into every corner, like a slow-spreading mold that darkens the walls. I first recognized it in my own voice whenever I spoke to Clarissa. Words that used to be gentle, or at least neutral, now carried a frigid edge. "Where were you last night?" sounded more like an accusation than a question. "Did you remember to sign Brianna's school form?" was laced with resentment. Instead of apologizing or answering honestly, Clarissa would snap back or ignore me altogether. It was a daily tug-of-war, each of us pulling in opposite directions. My bitterness really crystallized one afternoon when she and I were forced to attend a parent-teacher meeting at Logan's elementary school. He was having a tough time focusing in class, understandably so, given the tension at home. Clarissa arrived 15 minutes late, hair perfectly styled as if she had come from a salon, not from volunteering or work. She offered a thin, insincere smile. During the meeting with Logan's teacher, Miss Turner, we learned that Logan had been doodling violent cartoons instead of paying attention. Miss Turner gently suggested we work together to create a calmer home environment. Clarissa nodded politely, promising improvements. But out in the hallway, she hissed at me. "You're the one always playing the victim. No wonder Logan's stressed." I nearly lost it. My throat went tight. I wanted to shout back that maybe if she were actually present instead of gallivanting with whomever, Logan wouldn't be anxious, but I held my tongue. Miss Turner's concerned gaze flickered in our direction, and I forced a smile. We were in public, and if there's one thing I'd learned, it was to keep my composure until I had a plan. That's how bitterness festers. You swallow it in these small humiliations, telling yourself you'll handle it later. Over time, it carves out a permanent place in your chest. Once we got home, Clarissa retreated to the bedroom without a word. I joined Logan in the living room. He was cross-legged on the rug, a blank sheet of paper in front of him. "Dad, am I in trouble for drawing in class?" he asked, eyes flickering with guilt. I ruffled his hair and said, "No, buddy. It's okay to draw, but maybe not while Miss Turner's explaining stuff. Let's find time after homework, all right?" He nodded, relieved. My heart ached my son was absorbing the fallout of a marriage turning toxic. I felt responsible for that. Around that time, I began reflecting on the legal battles that might lie ahead. My frustration with Clarissa was one thing, but I worried more about our children. I wanted primary custody. She'd become so unpredictable that leaving Logan and Brianna under her care for extended periods terrified me. The last straw arrived when she disappeared for an entire weekend without warning, only texting to say, "Going out of town. Don't worry about me." That was it. No mention of the kids, no explanation. Toby said I should see a lawyer. Derek concurred, adding, "Better to be safe than sorry." So I did. Quietly behind Clarissa's back, I gathered evidence. Phone records, messages, even the time she'd forgotten to pick up the children. It felt grimy, as though I was rummaging through a dumpster for scraps. But I'd learned from my day job the value of meticulous documentation. In the museum archives, every item had a log, every event a record. Why should my marriage meltdown be any different? I told myself I was just securing a stable future for Logan and Brianna. Deep down, though, I felt the stirring of a different motivation, a simmering desire to prove I wasn't the fool she imagined. 3 weeks later, I found out about the assault. It sounds dramatic, but let me explain. Clarissa and I had one of our final blowout arguments in our living room. She tried to leave mid-conversation, heading for the door. I moved to block her, demanding answers about finances, the children's routines, just basic responsibilities. It was the first time I'd raised my voice that loudly. She stormed up to me, slapped me so hard my ears rang and hissed, "You have no right to keep me here!" I was stunned, one hand pressed to my stinging cheek. We locked eyes in a moment that seemed to suspend time. Then she bolted out, slamming the door behind her. My face burned, but the real wound was deeper. The woman I once loved had escalated to violence. Toby helped me file a report after that. It wasn't that I wanted her punished, exactly. I wanted it on record because I had a feeling we'd end up in court eventually. And sure enough, the authorities took it seriously. There was enough prior tension documented that they proceeded with formal charges. Clarissa spent a brief spell in jail, only overnight at first. Eventually, she faced a hearing. I didn't push for a maximum penalty, but the system had its protocols. The judge sentenced her to short-term probationary measures, which ironically made her even angrier. That's when a darker side of me emerged, call it cunning or survival instinct. From the outside, it might have appeared I was calmly continuing with everyday life. I took the kids to the park, made dinner, went to work, and never publicly lost my temper. Underneath, I was plotting how to secure full custody if it came to that. I carefully documented every meltdown, every broken promise on her end. I was steeling myself for a fight, determined not to be blindsided again. During one of our cold, awkward mornings, Toby dropped by for coffee. Clarissa refused to come out of the bedroom. Toby and I quietly talked in the kitchen. He said, "You're doing the right thing, man. She's checked out. You gotta protect yourself." I offered a tight nod, swirling cream into my mug. I admitted, "I don't enjoy this. I just don't see another option." Toby sighed. "Sometimes the only option is the hard one." I felt the bitterness weigh heavily on me, but at least I wasn't alone. Derek even recommended I meet with a counselor for my own sanity. Maybe I should have. But I was knee-deep in the logistics of single parenthood, and part of me felt too proud to reveal how badly I was hurting. The day Clarissa's probation was finalized, she returned to gather some possessions. We ended up in the living room again, a tense, hollow exchange passing between us. "I'm taking a break," she mumbled, eyes flitting around like she couldn't bear to meet mine. "A break from what? Motherhood? Or the marriage you already destroyed?" I snapped. Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She just grabbed a suitcase and left. I remember staring at the empty spot by the hallway closet where she used to keep her shoes. It's astonishing how something so mundane, shoes in a closet, can represent security. Now that space was bare, and so was our relationship. That night, as Logan and Brianna slept upstairs, I leafed through the stack of evidence I'd collected. Typed notes, printouts of text logs, photos of Clarissa's abandoned responsibilities. The anger in me was searing, yet there was a stony calmness, too. This wasn't a fleeting marital spat. We were headed for the finish line, and I intended to cross it with custody of my kids intact, even if it meant airing all the ugliness in court. Looking at those traces of my soon-to-be ex-wife's deceit, I recognized that bitterness had rooted itself in my heart. But perhaps bitterness is just a stage before resolution. Maybe once everything was out in the open, her affair, her neglect, her assault, there'd be a clean slate. I wasn't naive. I knew the divorce itself would be messy. But I clung to a sliver of hope that once it was over, I could rebuild a better life for my children and myself. My life was in such disarray, I never would have expected a glimmer of optimism to appear amid the rubble. Yet sometimes, hope tiptoes in at your darkest hour, reminding you not everything is lost. A few weeks after Clarissa moved out for good, I was hauling a box of old naval schematics from the museum's basement to my office. My arms ached, and my mood matched the dull flicker of fluorescent lights overhead. Life at home was a scramble. Logan and Brianna's routines had fallen squarely on my shoulders. It wasn't all bad, but single parenthood left me perpetually exhausted. Meanwhile, the looming divorce was a swirl of court dates and negotiations. If ever there was a time I needed respite, it was now. Just as I rounded a corner in the museum hallway, my boss, Mr. Kennedy, flagged me down. "Andrew, I've got an opportunity for you," he said. His tone was as brisk as ever, though a hint of enthusiasm laced his words. I paused, adjusting the heavy box. "What's up?" He explained that the museum had a chance to work on a collaboration with a Naval Heritage Trust in Portsmouth. They needed someone to coordinate the exchange of artifacts, research documents, and maybe help finalize an upcoming exhibit. "It involves some travel," he said, glancing at me carefully. "You'd be gone for a short while, on and off. But it's a big deal for your career, a chance to show what you can do. Interested?" Ordinarily, I might have jumped at the chance. Now, with my kids' routines and the divorce chaos, I hesitated. A part of me itched for a change of scenery, though. Toby and Derek had said repeatedly, "You deserve a break, man." Perhaps this was it, a moment to prove I wasn't just some victim, but a capable professional who could excel despite personal troubles. Another part of me worried about leaving my children, even temporarily. Sensing my indecision, Mr. Kennedy added, "I know it's tough timing, but we can adjust schedules so you're not away too long. Maybe you can arrange childcare, or co-parent with your wife, ex-wife." He fumbled slightly, aware of the tension behind that phrase. I gave him a tight smile. "I'll think about it. Thanks for letting me know." Later, during a quick lunch break, I mentioned the offer to Toby. Over fish tacos at a dingy cafe near the museum, he nodded thoughtfully. "This could be good for you, Andrew. Change of scene, a little excitement. You've been burying yourself in problems for months now. Maybe stepping away, even if it's for work, is exactly what you need." "Yeah, but the kids." "Derek and I can help watch them some nights if needed," Toby said. "Clarissa might actually step up for once too, though I wouldn't hold my breath." He wasn't wrong. Clarissa had been unpredictable with visits. Yet the court was in the process of formalizing partial custody arrangements, so maybe she'd do the bare minimum. For my own sanity and my children's future security, I decided to risk it. I told Mr. Kennedy yes. Within a few days, we hammered out a travel schedule. It wasn't lengthy. A week in Portsmouth for planning, then sporadic follow-up visits. I felt a mixture of nerves and quiet excitement. The possibility of leaving my small sphere of tension at home, even briefly, felt almost like winning a pass to breathe fresh air again. In the days leading up to my departure, I dove into reading about Portsmouth's maritime history, the planned exhibitions, and the people I might collaborate with. Each new fact sparkled with promise, a distraction from my messy personal life. On my last day before the trip, I sat in the living room with Logan and Brianna, who were building block towers on the rug. Brianna asked, "Dad, how long will you be gone?" Her big eyes were filled with concern. I carefully explained, "Just a few days for work. Uncle Toby and Uncle Derek will help out, and if your mom wants to see you, she can pick you up. I'll call and video chat every night." Logan's brow furrowed. "You'll be back, right?" The question stung. "Of course, buddy. I'm not going anywhere forever." I gave them each a reassuring smile, ruffling Logan's hair. It pained me to realize how uncertain they must feel, with one parent already moved out under stormy circumstances. I promised myself I'd never let them doubt my commitment to them again. That night, I couldn't sleep. My packed suitcase loomed by the bedroom door, a tangible symbol of the changes swirling in my life. Outside, a drizzle tapped softly on the window. In the faint glow of my bedside lamp, I stared at the half-empty closet, Clarissa's clothes long gone, and felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Relief that she was out of the house, regret that our marriage ended so bitterly, anger, longing, guilt. They all mingled, forming a restless ache beneath my ribcage. It was nearly 2 in the morning when a fleeting thought sparked in my mind. Maybe everything I endured up to now was leading me toward a new chapter. Strange how a single idea can light up the darkness. I found myself inhaling deeply, as though physically preparing for a fresh start. The next morning, Toby drove me to the airport, chatting about random sports news to keep the mood light. I boarded my flight with minimal luggage, just enough for the week. Settling into the seat, I shut my eyes, recalling Mr. Kennedy's enthusiastic grin and Toby's unwavering support. The plane hummed softly beneath me. For the first time in a long time, I felt a shred of genuine anticipation. I wanted to do more than just survive. I wanted to thrive, to reclaim the parts of myself that Clarissa's betrayal had crushed. As the aircraft ascended through a blanket of clouds, I gazed out the window. A sense of possibility floated in my chest, warring with the usual anxious churn in my gut. The contrast was dizzying, like stepping off a sinking ship and catching sight of land in the distance. I told myself, this is just a work trip, keep your expectations realistic. But deep down, hope stirred. Maybe there was more waiting for me out there than just a business deal. Maybe I'd learn how to believe in life again. I had no idea whom I might meet or what events would unfold in Portsmouth, but a voice in my head whispered that it might be the start of something unexpected, something that could propel me beyond the ashes of a failed marriage. As the plane banked eastward, I allowed myself a faint smile. Even if the future was a mystery, at least it felt open now, no longer a locked door behind which Clarissa's betrayal loomed. I didn't realize it then, but that faint flicker of optimism would keep me afloat in the nights to come when I'd find myself questioning every assumption I'd ever made about trust, love, and how far I was willing to go to protect my heart. For the moment, though, I rested my head against the seat and let my weary eyelids close. Touching down in Portsmouth felt like stepping into a different world. A crisp breeze ruffled my jacket as I exited the small airport, rolling my carry-on behind me. I had arranged a short-term stay at a hotel near the waterfront close enough to the Maritime Research Facility where I'd be meeting a local historian. My boss back home insisted this collaboration could raise our museum's profile. I tried to channel some enthusiasm, but in truth, I was just relieved to be away from the weight of my pending divorce and the tension at home. The taxi ride from the airport showcased Portsmouth's blend of old naval architecture and more modern storefronts. I caught sight of a few cafes with chalkboard menus, a convenience store with neon lights, and distant ship masts that reminded me of my own museum exhibits. The driver made small talk, but I mostly stared out the window, letting the swirl of unfamiliar streets distract me. By early evening, I'd checked into my hotel, a tidy, unassuming place with a modest lobby. After a quick shower to shake off the travel fatigue, I headed downstairs, searching for a warm meal. My plan was to dine alone, maybe review some notes about the upcoming exhibit exchange, then collapse into bed. But fate, as it turned out, had something else in mind. I stepped into the hotel's lounge, which doubled as a small bar and restaurant. It was subdued, faint jazz music drifting from overhead speakers, a few patrons chatting in low voices. Sliding onto a stool by the bar, I ordered a simple burger and a ginger ale. My mind still roamed back to my kids, Logan and Brianna, hoping they were handling my absence without too much anxiety. As I waited for my food, I noticed someone settle into the seat beside me, a woman with dark hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing a casual burgundy blouse. She gave me a polite nod and requested a glass of wine from the bartender. Initially, I tried not to stare, but I caught her side profile in the mirror behind the liquor shelves. Her posture was confident, her expression calm. Something about her presence tugged at me. When the bartender moved away, she glanced in my direction. "Long day?" she asked in a gentle tone. Her accent was American, which immediately put me more at ease. My own accent wouldn't stand out so much in conversation. I turned to face her, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, flew in from the States this afternoon for work. Still a little jet-lagged." I introduced myself. "I'm Andrew." She extended her hand, returning the smile. "Lydia," she said simply. Well, I guess you could say I'm passing through for business, too." She let out a light laugh that held a note of fatigue, as though life had been wearing on her. Needed a break from all the drama back home. A pang of familiarity sparked in my chest. I get that. Sometimes it's good to get away from everything. The bartender returned with her wine. She took a sip, looking momentarily lost in thought. The next few minutes passed in casual conversation. She asked why I was in Portsmouth. I explained about the naval collaboration, how my museum in the States wanted to coordinate some exhibitions with local historians. Lydia nodded, genuinely curious. "I've always been fascinated by maritime history," she said, tapping the stem of her wine glass. "It's like a whole other world." Before I knew it, I'd finished my burger and we were still chatting. It felt oddly comforting, two strangers sharing small pieces of themselves in a quiet hotel bar. I noticed Lydia wore no wedding ring, but I didn't dwell on that detail. Actually, I pushed the thought aside. After everything with Clarissa, I wasn't eager to dig into someone else's life story. Yet there was an unspoken connection forming between us, or so it seemed. Eventually, she set down her wine glass and offered a wry smile. "Do you mind if I join you for dinner? I'm not in the mood to eat alone tonight." Her eyes flicked to the small table in the corner. My initial plan had been to retreat to my room and read, but something about her invitation felt too inviting to refuse. Maybe it was the easy way she asked, or how her weary look mirrored my own recent struggles. "Sure," I said. "Let's grab a table." We relocated to one of the dining tables along the window. Lamps with soft golden light illuminated our faces, the darkness outside making it impossible to see more than our own reflections on the glass. I ordered dessert, figuring a slice of pie might keep the conversation going, and she decided on another glass of wine. As we waited, Lydia revealed she'd been going through a rough split of her own, carefully choosing her words. She hinted that she was finalizing details of a difficult divorce. A pang of empathy struck me, like I was staring into a mirror of my own circumstances. I tried not to pry. Heaven knows I wouldn't want to share the full story of Clarissa with a stranger either. Still, Lydia seemed comfortable enough to share bits and pieces. "It's been messy," she admitted softly, gaze dropping to the tablecloth. "Some days I just want to run off to a new city and never look back. But I can't do that. Not yet, at least." She paused, then exhaled. "How about you, Andrew? Big reasons to run or just work?" A flicker of honesty rose in my throat. Part of me was tempted to lay out everything: my heartbreak, the custody issues, the bitterness with Clarissa. Yet an instinct said to keep it simple. "I have my own drama," I answered, swirling the ice in my water glass. "Complicated marriage stuff. I'm not sure where it's headed, but this trip is a welcome distraction." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Glad I'm not the only one in that boat." We both laughed quietly at the unintentional maritime pun. The conversation drifted from personal struggles to lighter topics: favorite music, weird travel stories, even local foods we wanted to try. It was easy. She was funny in a self-deprecating way, and I realized, somewhat surprisingly, that I was enjoying myself. The tension I'd carried for months seemed to ease just a notch in her presence. Eventually, we finished dessert, paid our tabs, and stood near the exit. With a certain gentleness, Lydia said, "Thanks for sharing dinner with me. It's nice not feeling alone in a strange city." Her eyes flicked up, meeting mine. Something about that look tugged at me, though I couldn't fully name the sensation. I swallowed, nodding. "Likewise. If you're around tomorrow, maybe we can grab coffee?" The words came out before I could second-guess them, surprising even me. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then gave me a small, genuine grin. "I'd like that, Andrew. Let's see if the day allows." We traded phone numbers, hers listed under just Lydia with no last name, which I noted but didn't question. Then she disappeared into the elevator. I headed up to my own room, mind whirling with the realization that I felt light. It wasn't love at first sight or anything so grand, but it was a spark, a reminder that even in the aftermath of betrayal, there might be moments of warmth left in the world. I closed my door behind me and collapsed onto the bed, letting out a slow exhale. My phone buzzed once a new message from Toby, wishing me luck and making a joke about British food. I responded briefly, but my thoughts circled back to Lydia. She'd mentioned a difficult divorce. So had I. Two wounded souls crossing paths in a foreign place. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe it was exactly what I needed to stave off the shadows from back home. Before drifting off, I felt a pang of guilt. Why was I so quick to connect with someone new when my personal life was still so messy? But exhaustion dulled the self-reproach. Tomorrow would bring new meetings, museum tasks, and possibly coffee with Lydia. Just thinking about it sparked a faint flicker of optimism. For once in a very long while, I was allowing myself a chance, however small, for a bit of happiness. The next morning arrived with a pale gray sky hanging over Portsmouth. I woke early to catch up on museum documents, reading about local naval artifacts that our American institution hoped to showcase. Outside my window, gulls soared across the harbor, and an occasional ship horn echoed through the damp air. The scene felt oddly comforting. I'd always been fascinated by the subtle buzz of port cities. After a quick breakfast in the hotel cafe, I rushed to my first meeting with Dr. Mirren, a local historian. She was a sharp, non-nonsense researcher who guided me through rows of aged ship logs and century-old photographs. The hush of the archive room reminded me of home except here. No personal drama lurked around every corner. I almost managed to forget my complicated life for a few hours. Near lunchtime, my phone vibrated. I glanced down, a text from Lydia. "Lydia, Free for coffee around 3 p.m. if you're interested. There's a cafe near the harbor pier. My stomach twisted with a strange mix of eagerness and caution. I typed back, "Sounds good. See you at 3." I told myself this was just a friendly invitation, no different from grabbing coffee with a colleague. Yet an undercurrent of anticipation ran through me. When 3 o'clock arrived, I found Lydia waiting at a rustic-looking waterfront cafe. She wore a light jacket over simple jeans and looked far more relaxed than she had the previous evening. As I approached, her face lit up in a gentle smile. "Hey, stranger," she said, lifting her coffee cup in greeting. "Glad you made it." We settled into a tiny table outside, though the weather was still a bit chilly. A few fishermen's boats bobbed in the distance. We traded small talk about our mornings. She'd spent hers sorting out personal paperwork, which she left vague, and I detailed my meeting with Dr. Mirren. Lydia's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "So you actually handle old diaries and letters from sailors? That's fascinating." "Sometimes," I replied, feeling unexpectedly proud. "I like preserving stories that might otherwise vanish. People often forget how much history is hidden in personal letters or old logbooks." She sipped her coffee, nodding in understanding. It was refreshing to meet someone who seemed genuinely interested in my work. After a moment, she set her cup down and asked with a quiet, direct tone, "What about you, Andrew? You mentioned your own complicated marriage stuff. Is it sorry I'm prying?" My heart hitched. Normally I'd clam up or deflect, but the sincerity in her gaze prompted me to open up, if only a little. I explained in guarded terms that I was separated, soon to be divorced. "It's not a clean break," I added, exhaling, "but I'm handling it the best I can." She nodded slowly, eyes filled with empathy. "I get it. Truly." She paused as if weighing whether to share more herself. Then, almost reflexively, she changed the subject. "I saw there's a maritime festival next week. Might be fun to check out if you're still around." An odd relief swept over me. We didn't dwell on my heartbreak or hers. We just let the conversation drift to local events, what sort of fish and chip shops we needed to try, and how the pier lit up at night. It felt good an escape from reality. Even the phrase, emotional escape, flitted through my mind. I knew it was precarious to find solace in a near stranger, but it also felt like something I desperately needed. We lingered at that cafe until the sun began dipping lower. The conversation ebbed and flowed easily casual jokes about the local accent, random anecdotes from our separate hometowns. It was amazing how normal it felt. After months of relentless tension, I craved normalcy like a parched traveler craving water in the desert. Eventually, she glanced at her phone and said she had to head back to the hotel. "I have a few calls to make," she explained, a slight tightness in her voice. "Personal stuff." "Everything okay?" I asked, half rising from my chair. "Yeah," Lydia said, lips forming a small, tense smile. "Just tying up loose ends." I tried not to pry, especially given how politely I'd skirted my own details. She teased that maybe we'd run into each other at the hotel lounge again. I nodded, trying to keep my tone casual. "I'm usually stuck reading or replying to work emails at night. But hey, if you get bored," she laughed softly, "I'll know where to find you." And with that, Lydia excused herself, weaving through a few other patrons before disappearing around the corner. I watched her go, feeling oddly buoyant. Part of me wanted to follow her, offer more company. But another part reminded me to keep my guard up. After all, I barely knew her. And I was no poster child for emotional stability right now. I spent the rest of the afternoon finishing up research tasks and emailing Toby a quick update about my progress. I glossed over Lydia, though. Toby would likely jump to conclusions or poke fun at me for vacation romance. I told myself it wasn't a romance, just friendly conversation, bridging two battered hearts in a foreign city. Later that evening, back at the hotel, I spotted Lydia in the lobby. She was on her phone, pacing in mild agitation. I nearly approached, but stopped when I saw the tightness in her features. She ended the call abruptly, lips set in a firm line. Turning, she caught my eye and forced a shaky smile. "Sorry, didn't mean to look so grumpy," she murmured. "Just some drama from home." I recalled her mention of finalizing a difficult divorce. It made sense she'd have tense calls. "No worries," I said softly. I get it. She held my gaze a second longer, then excused herself, mumbling that she'd see me around. An hour later, while I was double-checking historical documents in my room, a text from Lydia popped up. "Thanks for earlier. You helped me breathe for a moment." Something in my chest twisted. I typed back, "We all need a break sometimes. Hang in there." It occurred to me that I was playing with fire, finding comfort in each other's company when both our situations were messy. But the alternative was enduring nights of loneliness, letting my mind churn over Clarissa's betrayal. Lydia, in her own quiet way, was a temporary balm. Maybe I was that for her, too. That night, as I drifted off, I replayed the day's conversation in my head, the way Lydia's mood lifted while we chatted about local festivals, the echo of her laugh. I reminded myself I was here for work, not to entangle myself in someone else's heartbreak. Still, I couldn't deny that the mere thought of seeing her again brought an unexpected sense of anticipation, like stepping into a warm patch of sunlight after standing in the shadows for so long. Sleep claimed me eventually, but not before I admitted a small truth. I liked Lydia's company. Too much, maybe. My mind danced with a faint, reckless hope. If it was just an emotional escape, so be it. No promises, no illusions. Just two travelers leaning on each other for a glimmer of peace. Returning home from Portsmouth after that initial whirlwind felt surreal. I'd wrapped up the main tasks with Dr. Mirren and her team, leaving behind some unresolved follow-ups that would require another trip soon. On the flight back, I caught myself scrolling through texts with Lydia, little updates she'd sent about local weather or a funny mishap at the hotel. They were small, trivial messages, yet they sparked an unfamiliar warmth. The moment I stepped off the plane and onto American soil, though, reality came crashing back. Juggling my kids' schedules and dealing with fresh legal notices from Clarissa's lawyer left me reeling. The next few days flew by in a blur of parent-teacher meetings, arguments with Clarissa over the phone, and a restless Toby repeatedly asking, "So how was Portsmouth? You seem different." It wasn't a huge change on the surface, but Toby wasn't wrong. I felt different, energized almost, despite the chaos. I even caught myself humming while unloading the dishwasher a silly tune I must have heard on the radio during my trip. Brianna teased me, saying, "Dad, you're in a good mood. Did something nice happen?" I deflected with a shrug, ruffling her hair. Part of me wanted to spill everything. I'd met someone who made me forget my troubles, if only for a few hours. But I didn't want to invite questions I wasn't prepared to answer. One evening, Toby and Derek cornered me during a backyard barbecue. Their kids played tag with Logan and Brianna, shrieking happily while we hovered near the grill. Derek flipped burgers, raising an eyebrow. "All right, Andrew, spill it. You've been weirdly chipper since you got back. Not saying you're wearing rose-colored glasses, but there's a glow." I tried to laugh it off. "Relax, it's just that the museum project went well. Might be traveling back soon." But they weren't buying it. Toby wiped his hands on a paper towel, eyeing me. "You're telling me your trip was purely business? No interesting encounters?" A flash of Lydia's smile popped into my head. I debated giving them a sliver of the truth. "I, met a colleague there. She was friendly," I finally admitted, choosing my words carefully. "We had some casual conversations, that's all." Derek gave Toby a victorious grin like he'd solved a puzzle. Toby smirked. "Casual, huh? That colleague happened to be single?" My chest tightened. Lydia had said she was going through a rough divorce, so technically single, yes. But something made me feel protective about that detail. I shrugged. She has her own situation. Nothing serious. Just talking." Though I played it down, Toby and Derek exchanged knowing looks. I hoped they'd drop it, and fortunately the conversation soon shifted to the game on TV. But their curiosity lingered in the back of my mind. Part of me felt a spark of joy sharing even a glimpse of Lydia with my friends, yet another part screamed caution. We hardly knew each other, and after Clarissa's betrayal, was I truly ready to trust someone else? In the midst of this mental tug-of-war, Lydia kept texting me. Sometimes they were short greetings, "Hope your day's okay." Other times she'd mention random happenings. "Just saw the museum caretaker lock himself out, haha." Reading her messages made my day lighter, but there was a subtle mystery in her tone. She never offered many specifics about her background. Once I tried asking about her family, and her reply was vague. "We're not that close, just me dealing with personal stuff." Something about the secrecy nagged at me. During a restless night, I found myself replaying certain details from our conversations. Lydia had claimed she was finalizing a complicated divorce, but she'd never said where exactly she lived or how long she'd be in Portsmouth. I brushed off the questions at first, not wanting to pry. Yet a subtle anxiety took root. How well did I truly know her? We'd shared quiet moments, laughter, bits of emotional honesty, but actual facts? Those were scarce. That unease rose one afternoon when Toby swung by my house unannounced, leaning against the doorframe with a serious look. "I did a quick check," he confessed, almost sounding guilty. "You mentioned your new friend said she was dealing with a divorce. I found no public record of a Lydia from that area going through a divorce. It's possible it's not filed under her first name, or she's from another state, or—" "Toby," I interrupted, annoyance flickering in my chest. "Why are you checking up on her?" He sighed. "Because I don't want you to get hurt. You just got out of a terrible situation with Clarissa. I know you're a grown man, but something about this feels off." His concern was touching, but it also fanned my existing doubts. "People can have messy personal lives," I muttered defensively. "You don't have to investigate everyone I talk to." Toby held up his hands in surrender. "Hey, I'll back off. Just be careful, man." He left, leaving me stewing in a mix of gratitude and frustration. I couldn't blame Toby for worrying my life had been a train wreck for months, yet I disliked him snooping. Lydia deserved privacy, didn't she? Still, that evening, a creeping suspicion kept me awake. I found myself rereading Lydia's texts, searching for holes or inconsistencies. The next day, I tried calling her. For the first time, our conversations had mostly been texts or those in-person chats at the hotel. But she didn't pick up, and after a moment, I got a short message. "Sorry, can't talk, busy." The simple reply raised my hackles. Busy with what? Why so cryptic? One part of me longed to trust the easy rapport we'd built, to assume she was just overwhelmed. Another part, the side shaped by Clarissa's betrayal, insisted I should be cautious. I'd been blindsided once. I refused to let it happen again. A couple of days later, Lydia and I finally connected by phone. Her voice was soft, apologetic. "Andrew, I'm sorry I've been distant. Things are complicated. I promise I'm not brushing you off." I cleared my throat, walking out onto my back porch so the kids wouldn't overhear. "I get it," I replied, though my tone was tense. "Just wanted to check on you." She paused. "Listen, I'm actually heading stateside soon for some personal matters. We could meet up if your schedule allows." My heart gave a traitorous leap, excitement clashing with apprehension. Before I could respond, she added, "I should warn you, my situation, my ex, it's a lot." Despite the warnings echoing in my mind, I found myself agreeing to see her again. Maybe I was chasing the fleeting sense of happiness she'd brought me in Portsmouth. Maybe I was reckless, drawn to the puzzle she represented. I ended the call with a promise to let her know my availability. Once it was over, I realized I was trembling equal parts dread and a strange, restless hope. Was Lydia truly just a divorced woman seeking a fresh start? Or was there a deeper story behind her guarded nature? My gut told me I was walking a thin line between an unexpected second chance and a looming pitfall. But after everything with Clarissa, I yearned for a genuine connection. If Lydia was hiding something well, I figured I had enough intelligence and caution to handle it, right? That night, as I tucked Logan and Brianna into bed, I forced a smile, listening to them chatter about school projects. Part of me ached with the memory of how Clarissa let them down. Another part whispered that I deserved a sliver of joy. Lydia might be that joy, or she might be a ticking bomb. Either way, I felt compelled to find out. A week later, I returned to Portsmouth for a follow-up meeting about the museum collaboration. The schedule was short a few days to finalize paperwork and fetch some archival material. Still, I couldn't deny the real reason I was excited. Lydia had mentioned she'd be around too. We arranged to meet at the same waterfront cafe where we'd shared coffee before. The moment I stepped off the plane, I felt a flutter in my stomach. It was bizarre. With everything going on in my life, feeling giddy struck me as almost juvenile. But I couldn't help it. I craved another taste of that easy companionship. I checked into the same hotel room, 214 this time, tossed my luggage on the bed, and texted Lydia. In town. Let me know when you're free. 10 minutes later, she replied, meet me in the lounge at 7? At 7 on the dot, I strolled into the hotel bar, scanning the small crowd. There she was, perched on a stool by the far corner, wearing a light blue sweater and sipping something with a lime wedge. My heart tripped over itself when our eyes met. She gave me a gentle smile that erased the day's exhaustion. Hey, I said softly, taking the stool beside her. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, Lydia replied, swirling the ice in her glass. It's good to see you, Andrew. We eased into conversation about our days. Her day had involved more personal errands, while mine was spent rummaging through dusty archives. Before long, we slid into a booth for more privacy. The soft lighting made the room feel cocooned, separate from the rest of the world. She asked about my kids, the museum, even Toby and Derek. Her curiosity felt genuine. This time, however, I didn't hold back. What about you? I ventured. I realize I haven't heard much about your home or family. Are you based here in England or back in the States? She hesitated, a flicker of discomfort passing over her face. Then she forced a shrug. A bit of both, actually. I move around. My ex Malcolm, it's a long story. Her gaze darted down, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. I'm sorry I'm so vague. It's just complicated. Something in her voice made my nerves prickle, but I forced a reassuring nod. I understand, complicated. Truly. Lydia gave me a grateful look, and that was the end of it until about an hour later. We'd finished a light dinner, mostly lost in conversation that swerved between playful banter and half-spoken confidences. I excused myself to the restroom. On my way back, I spotted Lydia's purse on the seat. I'd left my phone in my jacket next to it. Reaching over to grab my jacket, I accidentally brushed her purse off the booth seat. It landed on the floor with a thud, scattering some items, a lip gloss, a small notepad, and something that caught the overhead light with a flash of metal. Oops, I muttered, crouching to pick everything up. Lydia was near the bar, paying our tab. As I retrieved her belongings, my hand closed around a gold ring, a wedding band from the feel of it etched with delicate designs. My mind froze. Confusion buzzed in my skull. We'd talked about divorces, heartbreak, baggage, but seeing a ring in her purse was like stepping onto thin ice. I replaced the ring quickly, trying to tamp down the swirl of alarm. My pulse hammered. Why would she carry a wedding band if she was in the process of divorce, especially if it belonged to an ex? Maybe it was left over, a keepsake she hadn't parted with. 1,000 justifications flitted through my mind, none quite soothing the sting of suspicion. Because the ring didn't look old or disregarded, it seemed polished, cared for. Seconds later, Lydia returned, smiling as if nothing was amiss. My voice came out unsteady when I said, "Ready to go?" We walked toward the elevator. Each step felt like an echo chamber of my racing thoughts. I weighed the choice. Confront her right now or give her a chance to explain? An ache of betrayal gnawed at my gut. But was that fair? She never explicitly said she'd thrown away her wedding ring. Yet something about this felt bigger, like a secret bursting at the seams. Once we were alone in the elevator, I couldn't hold it in. My words spilled out before I could stop them. Lydia, I saw a ring fall out of your purse. It looked like a wedding band. Her smile vanished. She stared at me, color draining from her cheeks. A loaded silence stretched between us. The elevator doors opened on my floor, but I didn't move. Neither did she. Finally, she exhaled shakily, stepping out into the hallway. I followed, my mind spinning. Andrew, please, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Let's talk in private. We ended up in my hotel room, standing awkwardly by the small desk. My heart pounded so fiercely I half worried about passing out. She clutched her purse, eyes downcast. I meant to tell you, she began softly. It's not what you think. Then what is it? My voice shook with tension. Memories of Clarissa's deceit slammed into me. You told me you were divorcing, that it was complicated. So whose ring is that? Lydia's eyes brimmed with tears, anger, or grief, I couldn't tell. I am married, she admitted, voice trembling. But it's not a normal marriage. Malcolm and I have been estranged for months. We've been on the brink of finalizing a split, but everything's stuck in legal limbo. He's controlling. He refused to sign the papers. I've been trying to get free from him. My mind reeled. Married. Not just some messy divorce waiting on technicalities. Why lie about it? I asked, sounding sharper than intended. You said you were almost done with the divorce. You never said you were still actively married. Tears slipped down her cheek. Because I didn't want to scare you away, she whispered. And because Malcolm can be dangerous. He has people who keep tabs on me. I've had to keep my ring hidden, but I can't just throw it out. He'd notice if it suddenly disappeared. There's so much you don't know. My hands clenched at my sides. Part of me sympathized. Her voice shook with genuine fear. Another part felt raw betrayal. You should have been honest, I managed, chest tight. I'm not exactly shy about complicated relationships, Lydia, but you let me believe. God, She reached for my arm, but I flinched away. Andrew, please, just listen. Her tone was desperate. I care about you. That's real. I'm stuck, and I don't know how to get out without him retaliating. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The quiet hum of the room's heater filled the silence. This wasn't just a casual fling or an ex situation. She was married, presumably living a double life. My stomach twisted with anger, confusion, pity. All the illusions I'd built around her shattered in an instant. Finally, I stepped back, swallowing the lump in my throat. I need space, I said, voice hollow. I can't do this. Not again. Not with someone who can't be honest from the start. Her gaze darted around as though searching for a lifeline. Andrew! But I shook my head. Just go, I whispered. And without another word, she left, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Once the door shut, I stood there, heart thudding, mind spinning with 1,000 unanswered questions. My phone buzzed a text from Toby about something mundane. I stared at the screen, numb. Lydia was married. The ring was real, and I was a fool to think I'd found a clean slate in her. Collapsing into the chair by the desk, I clenched my jaw against the surge of anger and hurt. The pattern repeated itself. I'd been duped by someone claiming to be free when they weren't. But this time, I refused to sit quietly with the confusion. If Lydia was truly locked in a toxic marriage, I wanted answers, and I wanted them on my own terms. Outside, the wind rattled the window, as if echoing my internal chaos. I stared at the door Lydia had just passed through, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Betrayal stung like salt on a raw wound. Part of me already sensed that this was far from over because deep down, I suspected her story about Malcolm might be only the tip of the iceberg. I was still reeling from the revelation that Lydia was married when my life turned into something resembling a slow-motion catastrophe. For a few days, I tried to shut it all out, focusing on my routine, replying to emails about naval artifacts. But my mind never left that final moment in the hotel room. Lydia's admission that she was stuck in some toxic marriage, the gold ring glinting under the overhead light. I'd half convinced myself I wouldn't hear from her again. Then, on a late Thursday afternoon, I stepped out of the local grocery store to find a man leaning against my car. It was a crisp day, sunlight reflecting off his sunglasses. A sense of foreboding prickled at the back of my neck. He looked at me with an expression that hovered between rage and satisfaction. "Andrew?" he asked. Something about his accent and bearing made my blood run cold. "Yeah," I replied slowly. "Do I know you?" He removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that burned with anger. "I'm Malcolm." The name landed like a hammer blow. Lydia's husband. The one she claimed was controlling, dangerous even. A jolt of adrenaline surged through me. My fingers clutched the grocery bag tighter, knuckles going white. Before I could speak, he gestured to a second figure standing a short distance away, a tall, older man with a sharp gaze. "This is my father, Gregory," Malcolm said. The older man gave me the briefest nod, arms crossed. Their postures felt confrontational, like they'd planned this ambush. My heart hammered against my ribcage. I attempted to keep my voice steady. "What do you want?" Malcolm sneered, stepping closer. "You've been seeing Lydia behind my back. You think I wouldn't find out?" His tone was low but seething. "I warned her that if she tried anything stupid, I'd make sure it ended badly for both of you." The intensity in his eyes paralyzed me for an instant. I swallowed, recalling Lydia's trembling confession about him. "Look," I began. forcing a calm I barely felt. I didn't know she was married at first. She hid that from me. My mind screamed for me to get away or call for help. But we were in a public parking lot, though it was nearly empty. A part of me felt safer for that still. These men looked serious. Gregory cleared his throat. "Save it!" he snapped. His deep voice suggested he was used to being in control. "We don't care about your excuses." Malcolm stepped even closer, fists clenched at his sides. "You messed with the wrong family," he growled. My senses went on high alert. Then I noticed a glint of metal tucked partially under his jacket. A gun? A crowbar? I wasn't sure, but the intent was unmistakable. Fear tightened my chest. My voice wavered. "It's not what you think." Before I could finish, Malcolm swung his right hand downward, reaching for something. Instinct took over. I dropped my groceries, and as if on autopilot, I grabbed my phone from my pocket. In a flash, I tapped the speed dial for Toby. I didn't have time to talk, just needed him to trace the call or at least sense I was in trouble. Toby and Derek had teased me about paranoia, but they'd also urged me to be cautious after everything that went down in my personal life. Malcolm lunged forward, brandishing what looked like a short metal baton. "Stay still," he snapped. "We'll settle this right here." My pulse thundered in my ears. My mind scrambled. "Calm down, Andrew. Don't let them corner you." "I don't want trouble," I said, stepping back. "If Lydia lied, it's on her. I'm not looking to fight." Gregory tossed a glance around the near-empty lot. "Handle it fast," he muttered to his son. I sensed they'd planned an intimidation scene, but the unpredictability of a public place might have made them anxious. A few passing cars in the distance could witness something if it escalated. "I'm giving you one chance," Malcolm hissed, baton raised. "Stay away from Lydia. Don't even speak her name, understand?" His face contorted, raw fury dancing behind his eyes. It was as if he believed I'd deliberately stolen his wife. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted Toby's truck pulling into the lot. Relief and tension surged in the same breath. Toby and Derek both jumped out, apparently. Toby had called Derek on the way. They moved purposefully, worry etched on their faces. Malcolm and Gregory froze, noticing my friend's approach. I heard Derek shout, "Andrew, everything okay?" A silent wave of gratitude washed over me. If Toby and Derek hadn't arrived, this confrontation might have turned violent fast. Malcolm cursed under his breath, baton still in hand. Gregory's gaze hardened. He took a step toward Toby and Derek, assessing the new threat. Toby immediately pulled out his phone, stepping forward with forced bravado. "No need for trouble," Toby called. "We can all talk this out or we can let the cops handle it." Something about Toby's stance or the mention of police seemed to rattle Gregory. He grabbed Malcolm's shoulder. "Not here," Gregory muttered. Malcolm glared at me, then at my friends, clear frustration twisting his features. For a moment I thought he might lunge anyway, but he allowed himself to be pulled back. "You got lucky," Malcolm spat in my direction. "This isn't over." He threw the baton into the trunk of a nearby sedan, probably theirs. Then, with his father practically dragging him away, he retreated. They climbed into their vehicle and roared off, leaving me shaking with adrenaline in the cold air. It took me a moment to realize Toby and Derek were both at my side, asking if I was hurt. My groceries lay scattered cans rolling on the asphalt, a carton of eggs splattered. Derek crouched down to gather the items. Toby gripped my shoulder, voice taut. Man, what the hell was that about? Staring after Malcolm's vanished car, I whispered, "That was Lydia's husband." The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Toby's brow furrowed, but he didn't push for details. Instead, he glanced around, likely checking if there were any other threats. People in the distance paused to watch, but nobody approached. The tension still crackled in the air. Finally, Toby let out a shaky breath. "I had a bad feeling when you called and didn't say anything," he murmured. "Good thing we were close by." Derek offered a stiff nod, handing me the salvageable groceries. My heart still thundered, limbs buzzing with leftover adrenaline. We walked to my car in loaded silence. As I placed the battered groceries on the back seat, Toby asked quietly, "What's your plan now?" I closed my eyes, recalling Malcolm's livid face, the baton, Gregory's cold stare. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice hoarse. "But I'm not letting them walk all over me. Not after everything else I've been through. Anger coiled in my stomach, anger at Lydia for dragging me into this mess, and at Malcolm for threatening me. Derek sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "We've got your back," he said simply. "But watch yourself, Andrew. This is serious." I nodded, overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and apprehension. As Toby and Derek headed back to their truck, I slid into the driver's seat, letting my hands rest on the wheel. My phone buzzed with missed call notifications and a frantic text from Toby he must have dialed in a hurry. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked pale, eyes wide. I realized then that the relative peace I'd been clinging to was gone. Malcolm had found me. That meant he likely knew more than I'd imagined: my address, my routine, maybe even my kid's existence. A chill coursed through me. This would not be the last time our paths crossed. And for the first time, I felt a spark of defiance. I'd played the unsuspecting fool once with my previous marriage meltdown, but not anymore. Securing my seatbelt, I inhaled deeply. My mind whirled with options. The old me might have cowered, but a new resolve took shape in my chest. If Malcolm wanted a fight, I'd make sure I wasn't the one cornered. I glanced once more at the spot where he'd threatened me, then started the engine. Before pulling out, I texted Toby a quick thank you. Then, with a determined exhale, I drove off, certain that I needed a strategy, some kind of plan to shield myself and the people I cared about. The days of naive trust were behind me. Now I had to be smarter, more calculated, if I wanted to stay safe from Malcolm's fury. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd aged a decade overnight. My phone remained on the nightstand, silent. No texts from Lydia, no calls from Malcolm. I wanted to believe the confrontation in the parking lot had been a one-time scare, but deep down, I knew better. A man as furious as Malcolm wouldn't just walk away. I forced myself into normal routines, showering, making coffee, skimming the news, but my mind kept circling back to the threat of more violence. Eventually, I couldn't stand pacing in my house any longer. I decided to head to the museum archives, hoping a bit of mundane work might steady my nerves. While I was examining an old logbook in the quiet reading room, Toby called. I set aside the logbook, bracing myself. "Hey," I answered, keeping my voice low in the hushed environment. "Wanted to check on you," Toby said. "Derek and I were discussing whether you should get the police involved." I grimaced, glancing around at the handful of researchers hunched over documents. "Report what?" "Malcolm threatened me, but there's no proof except you two seeing him wave a weapon. He took off. I doubt the cops would do much." Toby sighed on the other end. "Yeah, I figured. Still, keep your phone on you." Before he hung up, he added quietly, "Don't let your guard down, Andrew." As I pocketed my phone, I felt a rush of gratitude for Toby's concern. However, the reality was clear. I had to handle this my own way. That thought unsettled me, reviving memories of the time I'd dealt with someone else's betrayal, of how I'd meticulously documented everything to protect myself. Back then, I was too naive. Now I realized, ironically, that the same instincts might save me again. Around noon, I decided to grab lunch at a nearby cafe. Just as I stepped outside, someone called my name. To my shock, it was Malcolm waiting across the street, arms folded, my stomach twisted. He'd found me again, somehow tracking my workplace. My mind whispered, "He's determined to confront you on his terms." Heart pounding, I glanced around. The sidewalk was moderately busy with passers-by. That might keep me safe from an immediate assault, but I still felt exposed. Malcolm crossed the street in long strides. "You're a hard man to pin down," he remarked, voice tight. "I talked to Lydia." My pulse accelerated. Lydia. A swirl of betrayal and worry tangled inside me. "Why are you here, Malcolm? I don't want anything to do with your marriage." He made a low, disbelieving sound. "Don't play innocent. You've spoken to my wife, tried to get her sympathy. You think I'm the bad guy?" He stepped closer, and I fought the urge to retreat. People walked by, shooting curious glances. "Guess what, Andrew? Lydia lied to you from the start. She told you she was single, right? She conveniently forgot to mention me until you found her ring." My jaw tightened. "That's on her, not me." The shame of being tricked flared again. It must have shown on my face because Malcolm suddenly paused, eyes flickering with unexpected confusion. He let out a harsh laugh. "Wait, so you really didn't know she was married?" A trace of uncertainty crept into his voice. Clearly, he'd come believing I had intentionally stolen Lydia away. I folded my arms, refusing to cower. I only found out recently. She told me it was complicated that you wouldn't let her finalize a divorce, and I believed her at first, but I want nothing more to do with her, or with you. Malcolm narrowed his eyes. You're lying. But the rigidity of his stance softened, just a fraction. He seemed torn, like part of him realized Lydia had spun falsehoods. She said you pursued her. A jolt of anger sparked through me. That's not how it happened. My voice sharpened. I discovered her secret and confronted her. She admitted everything. I ended it. My heart pounded, recalling how Lydia's tears mingled with a story of alleged abuse. Now, standing in front of Malcolm, I wondered if anything she claimed was true. His brow furrowed. So she's been playing us both, he muttered, sounding more perplexed than livid. She said I was controlling, that I refused to divorce her? There was a flicker of pain in his eyes, as though grappling with betrayal of his own. Then, just as quickly, his anger reignited, overshadowing any doubt. Even if that's so, you laid hands on my wife. I didn't lay hands on anyone, I snapped, exasperation flaring. We talked. We had dinner. I was naive. That's all. Even voicing it felt humiliating, thinking I'd found a connection, only to discover it was tangled in a toxic marriage. A brief silence settled. Passers-by continued to drift by, eyeing us curiously. The tension was palpable, but not the immediate threat it had been in the parking lot. Malcolm's face remained stern, but something in his posture suggested a begrudging realization. If you didn't know, then what now? He muttered. I stood my ground. That's up to you. I want no fight, but if you come after me again, I'll defend myself. My voice was steady, though fear still rippled beneath the surface. I'm not the scapegoat for your marital problems. We locked eyes for a moment that stretched uncomfortably. Then, to my surprise, he took a small step back. Fine, he growled, though his tone quivered with unresolved fury. But let me tell you something. Andrew Lydia's not who you think. She'll lie to anyone to get what she wants. Don't be fooled. A flicker of doubt threaded through me. Did that mean Lydia's story of his abuse was also a lie, or an exaggeration? I wanted to press for details, but didn't trust a word out of Malcolm's mouth either. This was a twisted labyrinth of half-truths. I'm done with both of you, I replied simply. Leave me alone. He exhaled sharply. If I find out you're still in contact, you won't get off so easy next time. The threat in his voice was blunt, but lacked the same fiery edge as our last meeting. He turned and strode away, shoulders tense, leaving me rattled on the sidewalk. I stood there, heart thudding. The conversation had ended without violence, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Toby again, texting if I was free for lunch. I typed a curt response, my mind stuck replaying Malcolm's parting words. If Lydia had lied to him and to me, how many other deceptions were swirling beneath the surface? Shaking off the dread, I continued toward the cafe, but lunch tasted like ash in my mouth. My past heartbreak over Clarissa's betrayal and my present chaos with Lydia collided in my head. My old self might have crumbled from such tension. Yet something inside me, the stony resolve formed from heartbreak, kept me upright. I wasn't the same naive soul who'd once believed in illusions. Walking back to the archives, I pondered a new question. If Malcolm was furious yet partly uncertain, maybe Lydia had spun different stories to each of us. If so, I needed to protect myself. Because if Lydia could lie so effortlessly, who else might she have manipulated? Had she told Malcolm I was some cunning seducer, or perhaps threatened to leave him for me? I felt an unsettling flicker of pity for Malcolm, overshadowed by a cold determination to avoid getting dragged down by any more of Lydia's manipulations. My anger morphed into a clear, grim decision. I would gather every piece of evidence possible, text messages, calls, anything that proved I was misled. If Malcolm tried to pin me as the villain, I'd have the facts to defend myself. No more blind stumbles. Under the gray afternoon sky, I headed back to work, mind buzzing with plans. A sense of calm, almost eerie in its clarity, washed over me. If I was going to survive this tangled web, I had to be strategic. This wasn't just about broken hearts or fury anymore, it was about self-preservation. I'd always been methodical. When life threw me off balance, I found comfort in gathering facts, documenting details, forming a strategy. It was how I coped with my past heartbreak, collecting evidence to protect myself. Now, with Malcolm's hostility and Lydia's lies swirling around me, I slipped back into that mindset. The first step was organizing all my interactions with Lydia. Late that evening, I spread out notes across my kitchen table, screenshots of her texts, bits of phone call logs, references to her claiming she was divorcing. It felt a bit obsessive, but I knew from bitter experience how quickly stories could get twisted if you lacked proof. Sipping a mug of coffee gone lukewarm, I tapped on my laptop, saving each digital record in a folder labeled LD. The name made me cringe, but clarity was vital. I also recalled Toby's suggestion to note Malcolm's threats, so I scribbled down every instance I could remember, from the parking lot confrontation to the sidewalk argument. My hand trembled at times, adrenaline flickering as I relived those tense moments. A part of me hated doing this, compiling data on people's lies and rage. Another part recognized it as the only way to stay safe. If Malcolm pressed me, or if Lydia's stories evolved in bizarre directions, I needed to be ready. This wasn't about vengeance for vengeance's sake. It was about ensuring I wasn't left defenseless if they turned their blame toward me. While I worked, my phone buzzed. Derek's name lit the screen. "Hey," I greeted, leaning back in my chair. "Just checking in," Derek said. I heard background noise. He was probably in his garage or car. "Toby told me you had a second run-in with that Malcolm guy." "Yeah," I muttered, tapping a pen against my notes. This time it wasn't as violent, but it was tense. He realized Lydia might have lied to us both. I paused. In a twisted way, that might stop him from coming after me again. Derek was silent a moment. "Hope so. But if you think about it, that might make him more unpredictable. If he's confused or feeling betrayed by Lydia, who knows how he'll lash out." The worry in his voice was palpable. "I hear you," I said, shifting my gaze to the timeline of calls pinned on my corkboard. "I'm being cautious. Thank you for backing me up. Always. Just let me know if there's anything else we can do." With that, Derek hung up, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stared at the array of evidence. A swirl of anger rose inside me, anger at Lydia for misleading me, at Malcolm for threatening me, at my own gullibility. But I forced that emotion into a cold, methodical plan. The second step was setting up a private cloud storage. I uploaded every screenshot and audio snippet I had. Audio snippet might be an overstatement. I'd only managed to record one voicemail from Lydia, saying she wanted to be free, plus Toby's near-panic phone call during the parking lot confrontation. But it was something. The idea was that if I lost my phone or laptop, I'd still have a record. This was the same caution I'd used in a previous ordeal. Never keep data in just one place. As midnight approached, my eyes burned from staring at screens. I took a brief break to pace the living room. The house felt eerily quiet. My only companions were the humming fridge and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. Flickers of memory intruded. Lydia smiling in that Portsmouth hotel bar, me feeling a fragile hope. I shook my head, banishing the nostalgia. That woman was a riddle wrapped in false promises. I couldn't let sympathy derail my plan. Finally, I sat back down and jotted an outline. Andrew's next moves. It felt odd to label it so plainly, but clarity was key. Document everything already started. Avoid direct contact. If Lydia or Malcolm reached out, I'd keep responses minimal and keep records. Prepare an ultimatum. If Malcolm persisted in threats, I'd confront him with the evidence that Lydia lied, making it clear I'd go public if he escalated. Watch for new angles. If Lydia tried to blame me for something, I'd be ready with timestamps, messages, and Toby or Derek as witnesses. I let the pen fall from my fingers. This was the shape of my new life strategy: caution, a quiet readiness to fight back. My heart pounded, a cocktail of fear and determination. In a small, bitterly ironic sense, I was grateful I'd learned these skills from my past heartbreak. At least it meant I wasn't walking blindfolded into another betrayal. A soft ding on my laptop broke the silence. An email from an unknown address. My stomach flipped. I clicked it, half expecting some new threat from Malcolm. Instead, it was from a coworker in Portsmouth, referencing additional maritime documents. Relief warred with disappointment. For a fleeting moment, I'd wondered if Lydia was reaching out with an apology or Malcolm with a threat. Maybe that said a lot about how twisted my life felt. My world was overshadowed by them. I forced myself to read the co-worker's message, replying politely about shipping times for the documents. Work, at least, was a safe haven, structured, factual, no emotional bombs hidden. If only I could bury myself in museum tasks and avoid personal drama entirely. But that wasn't an option. Not unless Malcolm backed off for good. Before powering down, I scrolled through a few online searches. Part of me was tempted to look up anything I could find about Malcolm or Lydia like Toby once did for me. But I hesitated. Did I really want to sink deeper into their history? My plan required knowledge, true, but rummaging through personal data might feed an unhealthy obsession. Then again, ignorance wouldn't help if they escalated. After a moment's indecision, I typed Malcolm, last name, marriage, county records, into the search bar. The results were sparse, mostly news articles about local businesses. Possibly I had the wrong region or incomplete info. I sighed, shutting the laptop. My head throbbed with tension. Setting aside the Andrews Next Moves list, I realized I was edging toward a line. If I became too obsessed, I risked losing perspective. This plan wasn't meant to ruin them, just to protect myself. I repeated that in my head. Protect yourself, Andrew. Don't let them twist your life again. The clock neared 1 a.m. I yawned, drained from the emotional roller coaster. After a final check that my files were secure, I switched off the kitchen light. In the darkness, the fridge hummed softly, a soundtrack to my newly minted revenge strategy. I might not have started out seeking vengeance, but I recognized the protective measures I was taking could easily shift into a personal vendetta if I wasn't careful. As I slid under my sheets, I thought about Malcolm's eyes, how they'd flickered with uncertainty when he realized Lydia had lied to me as well. That uncertainty might be my best leverage. If he doubted her, maybe he'd refocus on her deception instead of hunting me down. A small, grim smile tugged at my lips. Lydia's own manipulations might save me in the end. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my racing mind. This was only the beginning of my plan, but the foundation was laid. I had proof, a plan, and a willingness to use both if threatened again. Let them come. I wouldn't be anyone's victim. Not now, not ever. The next day dawned gray and drizzly, matching my somber mood. I rose early, sorting through the last of the digital archives I'd compiled. The phrase tactics and traps kept echoing in my head like a mantra. This was the phase where I'd set boundaries and be ready to spring a trap if Malcolm tried another stunt. My phone chimed mid-morning with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. No signature, no clue. A chill crawled up my spine. Could be Lydia. Could be Malcolm. Against my better judgment, I typed back, "Who is this?" A few tense minutes passed before the reply arrived. "It's Lydia. Please, Andrew, I have to explain." My pulse quickened. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to delete the conversation and move on. But curiosity overrode that impulse. If she was willing to talk, maybe I could glean more intel to protect myself. I texted, "Only by phone, no meeting in person." She resisted, replying that it was complicated. I held firm, phone or nothing. Eventually, she agreed. I took a deep breath, stepping into my bedroom for privacy, phone clutched tight. When I dialed, she picked up instantly. "Andrew," she said, voice subdued. "Thanks for not hanging up on me." I stayed silent, letting her speak first. The hush stretched until she sighed. I know you must hate me. But Malcolm's fury is out of control and I'm stuck in the middle. Can we just talk about how to make this right?" Her words tugged at conflicting emotions, disgust, pity, a sliver of lingering attachment. "I don't see how that's my problem," I answered quietly. "You lied to me from the start, Lydia." A shaky inhale sounded through the line. "I never meant to lie," she insisted. "I was desperate. Malcolm refused to finalize anything, and I was looking for a way out. You seemed safe." The bitterness rose in my throat. "So you used me as an escape hatch?" A pause followed, heavier than concrete. "And you told Malcolm something else entirely, like I pursued you. That's why he's been chasing me with a weapon in parking lots." Her voice wavered. "I was scared he'd hurt me if he knew the truth. That you what? I cut in. Fell for me? Because that's hard to believe now. My chest tightened, recalling the ephemeral hope I'd clung to. He claims you spin stories for your own gain. For all I know, you called me now because he's turning against you. She let out a soft sob. Andrew, I'm sorry. You have no idea how manipulative he can be. The irony made me almost laugh. Pot, meet kettle. The hush that followed was thick with tension. Eventually, I sighed, forcing my voice to cool neutrality. Look, I'm not your white knight. I'm done playing middleman. Malcolm threatened me, and I recorded evidence. If either of you tries to involve me again, I'll expose everything. Understood? She sniffled, panic creeping into her tone. Recorded evidence? Of what? His threats plus all our messages, I said curtly. If he pushes me, I'll show it to the authorities or whoever else I need to. I have no intention of going down because of your marital war. She gave a shaky exhale, sounding borderline frantic. Please, Andrew, don't do that. He'll go ballistic. And if he finds out I told you some of his secrets, I'm in danger. Genuine fear bled through her voice, stirring an unwanted sympathy in me. Still, I hardened my resolve. Then you'd better keep him away from me. This is on you, Lydia. I paused, letting the gravity sink in. You and Malcolm can tear each other apart if you want, but leave me out of it. Silence. Finally, she whispered, Okay, I get it. Another tremor in her breath. I never wanted to hurt you, I'm sorry. Her apology hung there, hollow yet tinged with what might be real regret. I answered in a flat tone, Goodbye, Lydia. Then I ended the call, chest tight. My mind buzzed with half a dozen questions. Was she truly in danger from Malcolm, or was this another manipulation? Did she see me as an ally or an enemy? I forced myself not to dwell. The next phase of my plan was already in motion. I had given my ultimatum in my own blunt way. The rest of the day, I maintained a guarded calm. Toby came by for a brief visit, glancing at me with concern. You look like you haven't slept, he commented, taking a seat on my couch. I shrugged, fiddling with a pen. Just dealing with fallout. Lydia called, tried to pull me back into the drama. Toby frowned. She's got a nerve. You give her an earful? I nodded. Something like that. Told her I'd release proof of Malcolm's threats if they come after me again. A flicker of pride and anxiety warred inside me. It's all I can do, warn them off. He let out a low whistle. Sounds risky, but I get it. You have to protect yourself. Exactly, I murmured, meeting his eyes. I won't be a victim again. Toby patted my shoulder, clearly uneasy but supportive. After he left, I double-checked the recordings and texts. Everything remained secure in my private storage. My trap was set. If Malcolm or Lydia pressed me, I'd lay out the entire ugly truth to whoever necessary legal authorities, mutual acquaintances, even Malcolm's father if it came to it. The knowledge that I held this potential weapon gave me a strange sense of power. Late that night, I found myself pacing again, mind flitting over the day's events. A single thought recurred. What if they don't back off? Malcolm had a violent streak and Lydia was unpredictable. My plan hinged on them valuing their reputations more than revenge. It was a gamble, and I hated gambling with my safety, but I saw no better solution. I paused by the living room window, staring at the quiet street under a solitary street lamp. Was it all worth it? This dance of threats and deception? A wave of exhaustion slammed into me. I yearned for normalcy, daily chores, quiet nights, safe routines with no cloak-and-dagger schemes. Yet here I was, forging a protective barrier out of digital evidence, phone logs, and half-uttered warnings. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd step up my caution. Maybe install a simple security camera outside, just in case. Another trap, in a sense, if Malcolm tried something near my home, I'd have footage. I never thought my life would require such paranoia, but each new threat hardened my resolve. I pressed a hand to my temple, feeling the stress headache pounding there. This was the cost of entangling with a married woman who'd lied and a husband who was ready to do harm. But if I had to face them, I'd do it on my own terms. Drawing the curtains shut, I released a shaky breath. My mind echoed with the final words I'd spoken to Lydia. Leave me out of it. If she had any sense left, she'd comply. Otherwise, I was ready. My evidence was safe, my trap set, Let them test me if they dared. Slipping into my room, I climbed into bed without bothering to undress fully. Exhaustion clung to me like a heavy blanket, yet my brain wouldn't fully shut down. Eventually, I drifted off, images of digital folders and phone records swirling behind my eyelids. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I had at least one weapon on my side now: knowledge. And knowledge, I reminded myself, can be a powerful shield against illusions and threats alike. I was standing in my living room, reflecting on the recent chaos, when the doorbell rang one damp Saturday morning. I'd expected a delivery driver or maybe Toby checking in, but through the small window, I saw an unfamiliar woman with wavy auburn hair gripping an envelope. A pulse of apprehension rippled through me. After everything that happened with Lydia and Malcolm, caution had become my new default. Still, something about the woman's anxious stance made me open the door. She looked close to Lydia's age, early 30s perhaps, wearing a soft gray coat. Her eyes darted around as though she was afraid of being followed. "Andrew?" she asked softly. Her accent matched Lydia's American cadence, subtle but noticeable. I tightened my grip on the doorknob. "That's me," I responded warily. "Who are you?" She inhaled, a slight tremor in her breath. "My name's Eleanor. Her voice faltered. She raised the envelope. "I have a letter for you, from Lydia." The mention of Lydia sent a jolt through my stomach. After all the secrecy, the threats, the lies, I didn't expect a direct message. I fought the urge to slam the door, but the raw emotion in Eleanor's gaze held me in place. "Lydia's sister," she added in a halting tone, as if expecting me to lash out. "I'm not here to cause trouble, I promise." Slowly, I stepped aside, letting her enter the narrow hallway. My home felt smaller with a new stranger inside, the hum of the heater intensifying the tense quiet. "Let's talk in the living room," I said, gesturing forward. She followed, posture rigid. Once we were seated, her perched on the edge of the couch, me standing by a side table, she extended the envelope. I recognized Lydia's handwriting scrawled across the front with my name. I only agreed to deliver this because Lydia asked me to," Eleanor said quietly, smoothing her coat. "But I want you to know I'm not on her side if she's done something awful. She told me bits and pieces, enough to realize it's messy, that you feel betrayed." My jaw clenched as I stared at the envelope. Part of me wanted to toss it into a shredder unread. The rest of me craved an explanation for all I'd endured. "Messy is one word for it," I said, voice taut. "And you just showed up to hand me a letter?" She nodded, eyes downcast. "She's in a bad place, but I'm not here to defend her exactly." A note of compassion flickered in her voice. "I've seen how she can manipulate situations. If you don't want to open it, I understand." I let out a slow, measured breath. "You said you're her sister. You haven't tried to talk me into forgiving her. That's interesting." Eleanor gave a small, sad laugh. "My sister and I aren't that close anymore. She's complicated. When she told me about you, I pieced together that she'd been dishonest. So I came to see for myself if you were the monster she hinted at, or if there's another side to all this." That stung. "She called me a monster?" I muttered, half under my breath. Typical. A blush touched Eleanor's cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm just repeating what she said in passing. Something about you threatening to expose her if she didn't leave you alone." I swallowed, recalling the ultimatum I'd given Lydia. "That part's true," I admitted, crossing my arms. "But it's not because I'm a villain, it's because she lied. I refuse to be dragged down again." Eleanor studied me for a heartbeat, then nodded. "That lines up with what I suspected. Lydia has a way of painting herself as the victim. I love my sister, but I'm not blind to her faults." A long silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the adjoining kitchen. My mind churned, unsure whether to trust Eleanor. She seemed genuine, her gaze steady, neither defensive nor evasive. Finally, I reached for the envelope, the paper crinkling under my fingers. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked more softly. "Why not just send it by mail?" Eleanor twisted the hem of her coat between her fingers. "She was afraid you'd discard it on sight. She thought seeing me another person might at least convince you to open it." I snorted. "She's not wrong about the discarding part." Despite my anger, I tore the envelope open. A few lines of Lydia's handwriting stared back at me. The gist: more apologies, a rambling attempt to justify her deception, and an admission that Malcolm was pressuring her. She ended with, "I hope you can someday forgive me." Forgiveness wasn't exactly in my repertoire anymore, but I skimmed the letter anyway, tension clamping my jaw. When I finished, I set it aside, heart pounding with frustration and a flicker of pity I hated feeling. "She says she's sorry," I murmured, stuffing the letter in my pocket. "Doesn't fix the damage." Eleanor cleared her throat. "I didn't think it would," she said gently. "Lydia does regret her lies, but regret isn't always enough." The sincerity in Eleanor's voice was unsettling. "So you don't expect me to rush into making peace?" I asked, surprised. She shook her head. "No, I'm here to deliver that letter and to say I'm sorry you got pulled into this nightmare. If you never want to speak to Lydia again, I get it." She paused, eyes flicking to the floor. "I wasn't sure how you'd react to me showing up. You must be on edge." On edge was an understatement. I exhaled, letting my shoulders relax a fraction. "I am," I admitted, "but you don't seem hostile." I glanced at the doorway, half expecting Toby to burst in with protective fury. "Why did you agree to do Lydia's bidding if you think she's in the wrong?" Eleanor pressed her lips together, a flicker of anguish in her expression. "Because she's still my sister. She's desperate and, frankly, scared of Malcolm's temper. She claims she's cut off from most friends. I guess I'm the last tether to sanity she has." Hearing that name, Malcolm twisted a knot in my gut. Yet I also sensed a quiet strength in Eleanor. "You're not defending Malcolm, are you?" She shook her head vehemently. "No, he terrifies me. I've only met him a few times, but that was enough. Lydia made her bed with him. I can't fix that, but I can try to keep things from escalating." I let her words hang in the air. The hum of the refrigerator grew loud again, as if the house itself was listening. Finally, I asked, "What do you want me to do?" She tucked a stray lock of auburn hair behind her ear. "Nothing you don't want to. Read the letter or ignore it, that's up to you." She hesitated, gaze uncertain. "And maybe consider hearing me out about Lydia's past with Malcolm. I know you're furious, but if you understand how she got here, it might bring you some closure, or at least context." Context. A faint weariness tugged at me. "I'm not sure how much closure I can handle," I admitted, rubbing my eyes. "But maybe I could stand to hear it. I'm tired of half-truths." Eleanor's shoulders relaxed as if relieved. She offered me a tentative smile. "Then maybe we can sit down some afternoon and talk. No pressure." She glanced at the clock on my wall. "I should go. I only took the morning off from my job." She stood, smoothing her coat. My mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts, residual anger for Lydia, curiosity about her sister, the faint glimmer of relief that not everyone in that family was out to use me. "Thanks for not pushing," I said quietly. As I walked her to the door, she hovered on the threshold. "Andrew, I know you have every right to hate Lydia, but if you want a calmer perspective, call me. There's more to the story than you might guess." She fished out a small slip of paper with her number. "No tricks, just a conversation." I studied the note, then looked at Eleanor's earnest face. "We'll see," I said. "Safe trip home." She nodded, stepping onto the porch. The autumn chill swept in, rustling my hair. With a final nod, she walked away. I stayed there, watching until she disappeared down the street, a curious swirl of conflicting emotions dancing in my chest. Eleanor was nothing like Lydia. She had none of the guarded flirtation, the hidden ring fiasco. Instead, she wore her worry plainly, delivering Lydia's letter without adding a manipulative spin. It felt like a breath of fresh air, just a woman caught between loyalty to a family member and empathy for the man that family member had deceived. I shut the door, listening to the click echo through the hallway. My gaze flicked to Lydia's letter in my pocket. Maybe it contained excuses, or maybe it was genuine contrition. Either way, the letter was overshadowed by the memory of Eleanor's steady gaze. She brought a strange sense of calm to a story defined by anger. Shaking my head, I headed into the kitchen to reheat the coffee I'd abandoned. The day had only just begun, yet it felt like I'd lived a week's worth of tension. A sister's plea, delivered in person. Maybe this was the start of something I couldn't yet name. All I knew was that, for once, I didn't feel solely trapped by Lydia's mess. A new figure had stepped into the stage, promising answers or at least a chance to see the bigger picture. Whatever came next, I resolved not to ignore the envelope's contents or Eleanor's quiet sincerity. Maybe understanding Lydia's past would help me find closure, or maybe it'd entangle me further. Either way, I realized, setting my mug on the counter, I had to move forward, and Eleanor, unexpectedly, might be the one to guide me to that next step. A few days after Eleanor's visit, I found myself staring at her phone number scribbled on that slip of paper. My initial instinct was to tear it up hadn't I had enough involvement with Lydia's family, but the curiosity gnawed at me. If there was more to Lydia's backstory, maybe hearing it would finally help me sever emotional ties and regain peace. So one afternoon, while Logan and Brianna were at school, I dialed Eleanor. She picked up on the second ring, her tone polite and cautious. We agreed to meet at a small cafe near the Museum District Neutral Ground, away from my home or any place Lydia might associate with me. The day we met, the weather was overcast, a dull white sky pressing overhead. I arrived first, nursing a cup of tea and scanning the cafe's decor wooden tables, local art on the walls. The place was quiet, only a few patrons tapping on laptops or reading. When Eleanor walked in, she spotted me quickly and offered a polite half-smile before sliding into the chair opposite mine. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, glancing at my tea. "I wasn't sure if you'd call." I shrugged, trying to keep my guard up yet not appear hostile. "You said there was more to Lydia's story. Guess I'm here to listen." Eleanor folded her hands in her lap. "Before I say anything, please understand I'm not defending her choices. I know she hurt you. I just think you deserve context." I nodded, gesturing for her to continue. She ordered a coffee from a passing barista and then launched into a tentative explanation. "Lydia and I grew up in a pretty strict household. Our parents moved around a lot, so forming stable relationships was hard. She always craved excitement running off with friends, partying. I was more of a homebody. As she spoke, I studied her expression earnest, laced with regret. When she met Malcolm," she continued, "I was in college out of state. She said he was charming, attentive, everything she wanted. By the time I met him, though, I saw cracks in the facade." I drummed my fingers on the table. "Cracks? Like controlling behavior?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes, possessiveness. He'd hover near her at gatherings, making sure she wasn't talking to men. At first, Lydia found it flattering, I guess. Later, it became suffocating. By then, they were married." She paused to sip her coffee. I tried to intervene once. Lydia got defensive, insisted she could handle him. Over time, I watched her lose that spark, her confidence. It's like she became someone else, always fearful. A flicker of empathy warmed in my chest, though I kept my tone guarded. "So you're saying her affair with me?" The word affair stung. Might have been an escape from him? Eleanor's gaze fell to her cup. "I suspect so. Doesn't excuse lying, though. She's always had a habit of bending the truth if it meant escaping consequences." She exhaled shakily. "I suppose it's her coping mechanism, but it causes pain everywhere she goes." I pressed my lips together, recalling Lydia's tearful confession about Malcolm's temper. When I confronted her about still being married, she insisted it was Malcolm who refused the divorce, that he was dangerous. Eleanor nodded. "He very well might be. But Lydia isn't exactly blameless. She jumped to another relationship without clearing her first. She tells different stories to everyone. It's a cycle. She seeks rescue from a new person whenever the old situation grows unbearable. But inevitably, more secrets pile up, and she flees again." That line, "she seeks rescue from a new person," landed like a punch to my gut. So I was just a convenient rescue fantasy? A flicker of compassion crossed Eleanor's face. "I don't doubt she grew genuinely fond of you, but yes, partly. She saw you as a stable, caring man. Maybe she believed you wouldn't question her story if she played the victim well enough." Anger stirred in me, tempered by sadness. "And Malcolm? Does he realize how much deception is going on?" A wry smile tugged at her lips. "Malcolm's not the type to analyze. He just reacts. Anger, jealousy, he thinks Lydia is fully at fault for everything. He never acknowledges his controlling side might have contributed to the mess." I leaned back in my chair, head throbbing with the swirl of information. I appreciate you sharing all this, I said after a moment, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. It helps me see how deeply twisted their dynamic is. Eleanor's expression softened. I wish it could be simpler. Lydia's made me deliver letters, collect her stuff, lie on her behalf. I've had enough. That's why I was honest with you. I'm tired of her leaving destruction in her wake. A short silence fell. The cafe buzzed gently with background chatter. I let the details sink in. Lydia's rootless past, her longing for attention, Malcolm's volatility. It painted a picture of a woman who'd spun me into her web partly out of desperation, partly out of habit. Eventually, Eleanor spoke again, voice cautious. Are you planning anything else? You mentioned you'd gather evidence to protect yourself. I don't blame you, but I worry about how Malcolm might escalate if he feels cornered. I thought of the digital files I'd locked away, text logs, phone calls, the threat recordings. I have my contingencies, I said evenly. I won't release anything unless they push me into a corner. If Malcolm tries to harm me or my family again, I'll use what I have. Eleanor nodded, relief evident. That's fair. Her gaze flickered to her watch. I should get back to work soon. Sorry if this was a heavy conversation. I offered a small, tight smile. No heavier than what I'm used to these days. You've been honest, though, so thank you. I hesitated, then added, You mentioned you weren't here to defend Lydia. So why go through all this trouble? She looked down at her coffee, swirling the remnants. Because no one else cares enough to clarify the truth. And I feel a bit responsible. Lydia is my sister, after all. If I can help someone understand how she got here, maybe the damage won't be quite so catastrophic. The sincerity in her words touched a chord in me. Well, I said, standing, it helps. Maybe I can stop blaming myself for falling into her trap. She has a pattern, and I was just the next mark. Eleanor stood as well, pulling on her coat. You're not just a mark. People matter. She does love in her own complicated way, but that love can be overshadowed by fear and lies. She paused, glancing at me. I'm sorry for everything you've endured. I gave a slight nod, swallowing hard. I guess we're all sorry. Let's just hope the worst is behind us. Eleanor's eyes held a glimmer of hope. If you ever need to talk, you have my number. Then she headed for the door, her footsteps echoing in the quiet cafe. I watched her go, a mix of relief and lingering sadness filling my chest. Lydia's story was more convoluted than I'd realized, yet it didn't erase the fact that I was left wounded and wary. Standing among the half-empty cups and subdued lighting, I found a small measure of comfort in Eleanor's honesty. A painful explanation, yes, but a necessary one. I gathered my jacket, thanking the barista with a polite nod as I left. Outside, the sky still hung heavy with pale clouds. The chill of the breeze reminded me that life moved on despite all the heartbreak. As I walked to my car, I let myself believe for a moment that with this newfound perspective, I could finally step forward no longer bound by resentment alone, but armed with the truth of how Lydia's life had tangled with mine. Maybe it wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. A week drifted by following that cafe meeting with Eleanor. I spent most of my free hours maintaining normalcy, helping Logan with his science project on weather patterns, cheering at Brianna's weekend soccer game, balancing my responsibilities at the museum. My acquaintances, Toby, Derek noticed I wasn't quite as tense. One evening, I was poring over an old submarine schematic in my living room, half watching a documentary on TV when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen surprised me, Eleanor. We hadn't spoken since our conversation at the cafe. I picked up. Hello? Hey, Andrew, came her gentle voice. I hope I'm not interrupting. I was just calling to see how you're doing. After everything, I guess I wanted to check in. Despite the swirl of wariness I'd lived with, I felt an odd sense of calm hearing her. I'm okay, I replied, setting aside the schematic. Or at least better than I was. A warm chuckle sounded on her end. That's good to hear. I'm around the neighborhood tomorrow for errands. If you want to grab coffee again or just talk, I'd be up for it. I caught myself smiling. Sure, I said, glancing at the soccer schedule on the fridge. I'm free in the late afternoon. And so, the next day, we found ourselves sitting at a modest diner near the local library, sunbeams filtering through the large window. Eleanor sipped tea while I tackled a slice of cherry pie. We chatted about minor life details, her job in marketing, my new exhibit plans at the museum. It was surprisingly easy. Partway through, she paused, eyes flicking to my face. "I know we only met because of Lydia, but I enjoy talking to you," she admitted, a hint of nerves in her voice. "You're straightforward in a way my sister never was." I shrugged, feeling a flush creep up my neck. "I guess I'm too tired for games these days." Then, quieting my voice, I asked, "How's Lydia doing? Not that I'm worried, just curious if she's still stirring trouble." Eleanor's expression dimmed. "She's lying low, I think. Malcolm's agreed to counseling if she doesn't contact you again." She twisted her mug. "But she's not happy about it. She keeps complaining that nobody understands her." A prick of old anger flared. "And I suppose that's somehow my fault," I said, biting back bitterness. Eleanor's lips thinned. "I won't lie. She does resent the possibility of you exposing everything. But I told her your threat was a direct result of her deceit." She exhaled softly. "I'm sure she'll keep complaining. That's how she copes." I felt an unexpected wave of relief that Lydia's energy was apparently directed elsewhere. "Glad to hear she's not actively messing with my life," I admitted, leaning back in the diner booth. "But that's enough about her." Eleanor nodded, seeming grateful to shift the conversation. She asked about Logan and Brianna, her eyes lighting up when I described Brianna's determined soccer style, Logan's fascination with comic heroes. She laughed in a genuine, unguarded way, a stark contrast to Lydia's calculated flirtation. With each passing moment, I felt my shoulders ease, tension slipping away. Once we finished our food, I walked her back to her car in the parking lot. The crisp autumn air carried the distant scent of a food truck grilling something aromatic. Eleanor paused by her sedan, glancing up at me. "I like hearing about your kids," she said. "Sounds like you're a wonderful dad." "Just doing my best," I replied, a shy grin tugging at my lips. "They keep me grounded, especially with everything that's gone on." The wind ruffled her auburn hair. She hesitated, as if weighing what to say next, then took a small step closer. "Andrew, I know it's odd us becoming friends, I guess, because of Lydia's chaos. But I want you to know I'm around if you need anything, even if it's just a venting session about museum stress." Her statement hung in the air, warm with sincerity. "I appreciate that," I said softly, tucking my hands into my pockets. "You've been straightforward too, no illusions. It's a relief." She gave a playful roll of her eyes. "Life's short, might as well be honest." We exchanged goodbyes and she pulled away, leaving me standing there, the autumn sun kissing my face. Friends, that was how it felt. A genuine, slow-growing connection. No hidden motives, no complex webs of deceit. I exhaled, letting the moment settle. In the shadow of Lydia's betrayal, Eleanor's quiet presence felt almost surreal. Over the next couple of weeks, we developed a casual rhythm of texts, short updates, occasional memes about hectic workdays, or a random photograph of a new art piece at the museum I thought she'd like. We didn't meet every day, nor did we pry into each other's personal baggage. Instead, it was a soft unfolding of trust, like laying bricks on a new foundation, one piece at a time. Once, she stopped by my house while Toby and Derek were visiting. We'd just finished a sloppy attempt at grilling steaks out back, Logan and Brianna chasing Toby's kids across the lawn. Derek answered the front door, startled to see her. She introduced herself politely, explaining she was a friend of mine. The curious look Derek shot me afterward spoke volumes. He'd known only the disasters connected to Lydia, so meeting the sister was unexpected. But by the time Eleanor left, both Toby and Derek seemed at ease. She had that unassuming warmth about her. Later, Derek teased me when the kids were out of earshot. "Andrew, you keep surprising us. Who'd have thought you'd end up buddies with Lydia's sister of all people?" I shrugged, not fully sure how to describe it myself. Meanwhile, in all these interactions, I watched for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. Each time, I found none, just an honest curiosity about my day-to-day life, a willingness to listen, and a calm empathy. Maybe it was the shock of dealing with Lydia that made me appreciate Eleanor's sincerity more acutely. Or maybe she and I just clicked on a level I couldn't have anticipated. One lauky Sunday, she invited me to check out a small community park she loved, known for its duck pond and family-friendly trails. I decided to bring Brianna and Logan along, thinking it'd be a harmless outing. Eleanor met us at the park entrance, wearing a light jacket and carrying a small bag of birdseed for the ducks. My kids took to her quickly. Brianna marveled at her hair color. Logan asked if she liked comic books. She laughed with a kind of heartfelt amusement that made my guarded heart ease further. We spent the afternoon strolling the paths, tossing birdseed, snapping silly pictures. At one point, Logan tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Dad, is Miss Eleanor your friend?" I nodded, smiling at his curiosity. "Yeah, buddy, she is." He gazed at her across the pond, feeding ducks with Brianna. "She seems nice," he said, before running off to join them. For a moment, I just stood there, taking in the scene, my children relaxed and content, Eleanor graciously sharing a simple joy with them. It felt normal. A corner of me stirred with something like hope, that maybe my life could hold genuine friendships again without fear. That evening, when we parted ways at the parking lot, there was a new warmth in our farewell. She gave a playful wave to Brianna and Logan, then turned to me. "They're great kids," she said softly. "I can see how much you love them." I felt my pulse flutter, unaccustomed to such gentle praise. "Thanks," I managed. "They seem to like you too. It's been a while since they warmed up to someone new." Her smile was tinged with understanding. "Kids sense sincerity. I'm glad they're comfortable with me." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I hope I'm not crossing lines by spending time with them considering, well, how we met." I read the uncertainty in her eyes. "You're not crossing lines," I said firmly. "This is different from what happened with Lydia. You're just you, Eleanor. And you've been honest from day one." Something flickered in her gaze, relief perhaps. "Thank you," she whispered. We stood for a moment in companionable silence before she got into her car and drove off. On the ride home, Brianna chattered about the ducks. Logan mentioned how Eleanor had promised to show him a cool new comic series. The swirl of normal family talk warmed me. Part of me wondered if Toby and Derek would find this turn of events bizarre, forming a bond with my ex-lover's sister. But it felt too natural to question. I wanted to see where it led, step by steady step. As the sun sank behind the trees, I parked in my driveway, a subtle sense of possibility humming in my veins. Sure, I still had baggage. I wasn't naive enough to think life would be all sunshine from here on out. But for the first time in ages, I glimpsed a path forward that didn't revolve around grudges or cunning revenge. Instead, it revolved around genuine companionship, the slow building of trust with someone I never expected to meet. Time passed, and my growing friendship with Eleanor threaded its way into my daily rhythm. We'd exchange casual messages, she'd send a photo of a new park she found, I'd share a goofy anecdote about Logan's obsession with building model submarines. Sometimes we'd meet for a quick lunch near her workplace. Other times, she'd drop by my house to say hello, always respectful if Toby, Derek, or my children were around. One late afternoon, after I finished a shift at the museum, I found a text from Eleanor. "I have something to tell you. Nothing bad, I promise, but can we talk?" My heart skipped. Her tone felt heavier than usual. I typed back a quick yes, and we arranged for her to come by around 7. That evening, once Logan and Brianna were tucked into bed, I saw headlights sweep across my window. I slipped on a jacket, stepping onto the porch to greet her. She stood there under the soft glow of the porch light, hands tucked in her coat pockets. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair. "Cold night," I remarked, gesturing her inside. She nodded, following me through the living room to the small den where we could speak quietly without waking the kids. "Thanks for seeing me so late," she said, settling onto the couch. I took the armchair nearby. She looked around, eyes lingering on the family photos perched on a shelf. "I love how you have pictures of the kids everywhere." I shrugged with a half-smile. "They're my world." Letting out a slow breath, I braced myself. "So what did you want to talk about?" Eleanor glanced at her folded hands. "I'm not entirely sure how to say this," she began, voice quavering slightly. "But the more time I spend with you, the more I realize it's not just about me being nice or you being a relief from Lydia's drama. I like you, Andrew, more than I expected." A swirl of emotion hit me: surprise, warmth, a flutter of cautious excitement. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. She forged ahead, cheeks flushing. I'm sure it's complicated, considering how we met, and I don't want you to feel pressured, but you deserve honesty. This isn't just friendship for me. I've felt something deeper growing. The directness of her confession took my breath for a moment. I recalled nights spent awake, thinking about how calm and real she felt compared to Lydia's elaborate facade. Still, I needed to tread carefully. I shifted in my seat. Eleanor, I appreciate your honesty. I hesitated, carefully choosing words. I won't lie. I feel a connection, too. Her eyes flicked up, relief and uncertainty mingling. But we both have baggage, she acknowledged, voice trembling slightly. I'm not blind to that. No, we do, I said softly. I've been through a lot these past months. The betrayals, the threats. I'm cautious. My heart thudded. But you've been a bright spot in all that chaos. A small smile curved her lips. I wasn't sure you'd feel the same way. With Lydia in the picture, it's awkward. Awkward is an understatement, I admitted, the ghost of a grin touching my face. But I won't hold your sister's actions against you. You've proven you're nothing like her. A hush settled, the only sound the faint tick of the wall clock. She studied me with a mix of hope and vulnerability. So where does that leave us? She asked quietly. I inhaled, letting the warmth of her honesty sink in. Part of me wanted to leap into this new feeling, some blend of affection and relief. Another part whispered caution. I guess it leaves us talking about it, slowly. I'm not ready to jump headfirst into a relationship, but I can't deny I'm drawn to you, Eleanor. She nodded, her expression softening with understanding. We can go slow. I don't want to complicate your life with your kids or your circle of friends or the ghost of Lydia. I needed to speak my truth. Standing from the armchair, I moved closer, sitting beside her on the couch. Her eyes flickered with apprehension, then relaxed when I gently reached for her hand. Your truth means a lot to me, I murmured. I've had too many illusions. Honesty feels good. She squeezed my hand, her gaze drifting to the framed photos of Logan and Brianna on the side table. They mean everything to you. If we do this, I don't want them confused or hurt. We'll be mindful. I managed a small laugh. Believe me, I'm hyper-aware of that. But they already like you. Actually, they keep asking when Miss Eleanor will show them the next park. A gentle chuckle escaped her lips. I'd love to, but only if you're comfortable. I don't want to overstep boundaries. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the lamp in the corner throwing soft shadows across the room. The tension was there, but it was a peaceful tension, like stepping onto a path we'd each chosen to navigate carefully. Finally, I asked, You sure about this? Dating me means dealing with some leftover drama. Toby and Derek might ask a million questions. Malcolm might reappear, and Lydia could spin stories again. She squared her shoulders, a quiet determination in her eyes. I'm sure. Life is messy, Andrew. I'd rather face the mess with someone I trust than stay safe on the sidelines. Her words sparked a surge of emotion. Overwhelmed by gratitude and longing, I leaned in cautiously, mindful not to scare her. She met me halfway in a gentle, tentative kiss. It wasn't charged with the frantic heat of secrets or manipulation. Instead, it felt soft and honest, a promise of something real. We pulled back, eyes searching each other's faces. My pulse pounded, a swirl of relief mingled with excitement. Thank you, I whispered, voice tight with emotion, for trusting me enough to share how you feel. She smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Same goes for you, trusting me when you have every reason to be wary. I rested my hand lightly on her shoulder. We'll take it slow, step by step like you said. No big announcements. Just see where this leads. Eleanor nodded, her gaze warm, and we settled into a comfortable closeness on the couch. We talked in low voices about everyday details, her marketing deadlines, the silly jokes Toby told last week, whether Logan might need new sneakers. The conversation flowed easily, as if we'd known each other for far longer than a few weeks. Occasionally our hands brushed or our knees touched, each slight contact weaving a subtle intimacy. By the time she stood to leave, the clock read nearly midnight. I walked her to the door, reluctant to end the evening. She paused at the threshold, turning back with a soft smile. "This feels right in a strange way," she said quietly. I nodded, heart thudding. "It does. I'm glad you came tonight." She hesitated, then leaned in to press a delicate kiss to my cheek. "Good night, Andrew." "Good night," I murmured. She slipped out into the cool darkness, and I closed the door, a sense of gentle wonder blooming in my chest. Eleanor's confession was like a balm on the wounds left by Lydia's betrayal. There was no rush, no grand promises, just two people choosing to trust each other, step by fragile step. As I turned off the living room lights, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a trace of hope in my own eyes. I locked up, checking once more on Logan and Brianna, both sleeping peacefully. My mind whirled with questions about the future, but I let them be, content to savor the moment. Instead, I drifted to bed, heart lighter than it had been in months, feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was on the verge of something good. I'm no stranger to uneasy mornings, but today's had a different edge. It started with a text from Toby. Heard something about Lydia and Malcolm doing therapy. Weird, right? My thumb hovered over the reply button, uncertain how to respond. Therapy for them? I felt a swirl of relief and lingering wariness in my gut. It had been weeks since my last heated run-in with Malcolm. In that time, my life settled into something resembling normal. Nights with the kids doing homework, weekend outings with Eleanor. Meanwhile, Lydia had all but vanished from my radar. The hush around her felt fragile, like a vase on a high shelf. One wrong move and it would shatter. Still, Toby's text rattled me. If Malcolm and Lydia were in counseling, maybe it meant Malcolm was stepping away from his grudge. Or maybe it was another performance. I typed a brief reply. "We'll see," and left it at that. Later that day, I found myself at the local coffee shop near the museum for a quick break between tasks. As I stirred a packet of sugar into my cup, I overheard a table of people chatting about a counseling center across town. One mentioned a familiar last name, Malcolm's. I froze, eavesdropping without shame. "Yeah, that couple's intense," said a middle-aged man, shaking his head. "My sister works reception there, says the husband showed up yelling the first day, but apparently they've been calmer the last few sessions." Hearing that made my heart thud. So Toby's intel was correct. Lydia and Malcolm were indeed going to therapy. My relief was cautious, like stepping onto an icy pond. If they truly worked on their issues, maybe the threat to me would fade. Maybe the quiet in my life wouldn't be shattered after all. Yet a part of me recalled Lydia's capacity for deception, Malcolm's explosive anger. Would a handful of counseling sessions fix that? Hard to imagine. But if it meant fewer showdowns, so be it. When I left the coffee shop, a faint drizzle had begun, pattering on the sidewalk. I tugged my jacket hood up and hurried to my car, phone buzzing again with a message from Derek. "Toby told me about the therapy rumor. Let's hope it sticks." I pocketed the device, mind drifting. Toby and Derek had stood by me through this entire mess, and now they felt as anxious as I did. Part of me wanted to stay updated on Lydia and Malcolm's counseling. Another part wanted them to vanish from my concern. That evening, I sat at the dining table with Logan and Brianna, helping them with math homework. The rain drummed on the windows, cozying the house in a gentle hush. My phone lay nearby, silent now. Briefly, I thought of how drastically life had changed. A few months back, my days were consumed by tension from Lydia's lies, Malcolm's threats. Now I was back to everyday fatherhood, with only the occasional ghost of that drama floating at the edges. As Brianna added an extra chocolate chip to her snack, she always sneaks more when I'm distracted, I found my gaze lingering on the family photo I'd placed on the counter. A snapshot of me, Logan, and Brianna at a local fair from last year. That time in my life had been overshadowed by bitterness from my divorce with Clarissa. Still, we'd managed a genuine smile for that picture. It reminded me how strong my kids were and how strong I'd had to become. Suddenly, Logan glanced up from his math. "Dad, are you okay?" His voice carried concern. I realized I'd been staring at the photo, lost in thought. I forced a small grin, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, buddy. Just thinking." He studied me, then nodded, returning to his homework. The trust in his eyes humbled me. I had to keep my promise. No more letting Lydia or Malcolm's drama tear us down. After the kids went to bed, I settled in the living room, a half-finished novel in my lap. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from an unknown number. Instinctively, my pulse picked up unknown numbers rarely brought good news. I opened it warily. "Andrew, it's Shelley from the coffee shop. Sorry to text unasked, but I thought you'd want to know. Lydia's been stopping by the cafe after her therapy sessions." She looks rough, but not angry. Just heads up. My tension eased slightly. Shelley was a casual acquaintance, someone I'd chatted with about local museum events. She must have noticed Lydia coming in. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied, eyebrows furrowing. Lydia looked rough? Good or bad sign? I set the phone aside, letting out a sigh. If Lydia was actually going to therapy with Malcolm, it could mean she was genuinely confronting her issues. Part of me felt a pang of empathy. She'd once manipulated me, sure, but behind that was a person trapped in a destructive cycle. If counseling helped her break free, maybe we could all move forward without lingering grudges. As the rain intensified outside, I flicked on a table lamp, the soft glow reminding me of evenings spent with Eleanor, sharing stories. She wasn't here tonight, busy with her own job demands, but she'd promised to drop by the next day. That thought warmed me. Eleanor had become a steady presence, like a subtle beacon guiding me away from old scars. And in the space Eleanor helped create, I found my urge for direct revenge fading. If Lydia and Malcolm were addressing their dysfunction, there was no need for me to keep the sword raised. That night, I dreamt of calmer seas, of me and Eleanor walking along a shoreline with Logan and Brianna, the waves lapping at our feet. No sign of Lydia or Malcolm, a peaceful future, unencumbered by betrayal. When I woke at dawn, the dream lingered, filling me with a tentative hope. The next day, after dropping the kids at school, I headed into work. The museum was hosting a small exhibit on early submarines, and I immersed myself in final preparations. Around lunch, Toby phoned, wanting my input on a friend's boat restoration. Amid the talk of rust and old hulls, Toby remarked, "Heard more rumors that Malcolm's sessions with Lydia are going smoother. Your name barely comes up now." I breathed out, a tinge of relief loosening my chest. "That's good. I'm done with the drama. They can fix themselves as long as they leave me out." Toby grunted in agreement. "I hope it lasts." When I ended the call, I realized how free I felt. A subtle weight had lifted. No more glancing over my shoulder, expecting a dark sedan with Malcolm at the wheel. No more anticipating Lydia's frantic messages. Of course, I'd keep my protective evidence stashed away in case old patterns resurfaced. But for now, peace was enough. That afternoon, after my shift, Eleanor dropped by the museum. We wandered the dimly lit halls, pausing by a newly arrived submarine artifact. She asked questions, genuinely intrigued by the mechanics. Her presence soothed me, anchoring me in the present. When she asked about Lydia, I only shrugged lightly. "They're in counseling," I said. "I'm letting them do their thing." Eleanor squeezed my hand. "That's wise," she murmured, voice low among the echoing displays. "Better for everyone to heal in their own way." I gazed at her, heart warm. "Couldn't do this without you," I said quietly. "Your honesty taught me a lot." A gentle smile curved her lips. We moved on, discussing unrelated bits of museum trivia, a comfortable hush enveloping us. As we passed a display case of old diving suits, I thought of how deeply I'd submerged myself in other people's lives before. Now, surfacing into honesty felt unfamiliar, but undeniably better. By evening, I drove home, my mind calm. A text from Toby awaited. "Weird not to be on guard, huh? Proud of you, man." I typed a quick thanks, grinning. Toby's right. It was strange not living in defense mode, but strange in a good way. As night fell, the hush in my house felt restful instead of tense. I tucked Logan and Brianna in, reading them a quick bedtime story. They drifted off, untroubled by nightmares. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the trees. I leaned against the window, letting the nighttime quiet envelop me. If Malcolm and Lydia were truly working through their issues, it could be the turning point. I had no illusions that therapy would instantly fix their problems, but at least it was a step. Their drama was no longer my daily burden. They had their path, And I had mine, Eleanor, my kids, a new horizon without constant strife. With a deep breath, I left the window and flicked off the hall light. Tomorrow I'd face new tasks at the museum, plan a weekend family outing. My revenge plan felt distant, an old shield laid to rest. Now it was about healing for them, for me. I wasn't naive enough to trust blindly, but I was ready to let go of the wariness that once consumed me. I went to bed with an unaccustomed lightness, a small smile touching my lips. The clock by my bedside glowed softly, and I thought how fleeting life could be. Maybe we all deserved a second chance at normalcy. Let Lydia and Malcolm patch up their marriage or part ways, whatever. I'd found my own route to peace, and that, for tonight, was enough. A few days later, I was clearing breakfast dishes when my phone buzzed. I expected it to be Toby or my boss, but the caller ID nearly made me drop a plate. It was Malcolm. My stomach twisted in reflex. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out. Curiosity and caution collided, but I exhaled slowly and answered. "Andrew speaking," I said, voice guarded. There was a beat of silence, then Malcolm's tone low, subdued. "It's Malcolm. I wanted to talk." I braced myself, ready for some abrupt threat or accusation, but instead, his breath came across the line in a shaky sigh. "I'm not here to pick a fight," he added. Pressing the phone closer, I leaned against the counter. "All right," I replied carefully. "Go ahead." He cleared his throat. "I'm sure you heard we're doing counseling. Lydia and me. Let's just say it's not easy. But something our counselor kept saying is that I need to own my part in this mess." His voice wavered, hinting at vulnerability I'd never associated with him. "I realized I lashed out at you because it was simpler than facing how my marriage was falling apart." I let the words hang, shock pulsing through me. Malcolm's raw honesty was unexpected. At last I managed, "I won't pretend it didn't cause damage. You threatened me more than once." A resigned exhale came from his end. "I know," he admitted. "That's why I'm calling. I wanted to say sorry. Sincerely. I overreacted. I let jealousy blind me, and I nearly hurt you in the process." My grip on the phone tightened. Memories of parking lot confrontations, a metal baton glinting. "That's appreciated," I replied, keeping my tone measured. "But you understand, I have a lot of reasons not to trust you." A rustle on the line, perhaps him shifting uncomfortably. "I'm aware," he said. "I'm not asking for friendship. Just letting you know I'm backing off for good. The counselor says we should clean up any loose ends, face them head on. You were one of the biggest. So, here I am." The sincerity in his voice threw me off balance. Part of me wanted to remain cold, to remind him how dangerous he'd been. Another part sensed his genuine regret. "I see," I finally said. "Well, apology noted. If you and Lydia want to fix your marriage, that's your business. Just keep me, my kids, and my life out of it." "That's the plan," Malcolm said. Silence lingered, thick with unspoken tension. Then he spoke again, quieter. "Andrew, I know you have evidence stuff that could ruin her or me. I'm asking man to man, would you bury that? Provided we don't cross you again?" My pulse thudded, recalling the recordings and logs I'd stashed away. My leverage. I closed my eyes briefly. The old me might have held that threat over his head. But everything had changed since I let go of the obsession with revenge. "You leave me alone. I leave you alone," I said softly. That was always the deal. A hint of relief colored Malcolm's voice. "Thank you. I won't bother you again." We said a curt goodbye. The call ended, leaving me stunned in my quiet kitchen. For a minute, I just stared at the phone, thoughts swirling. Malcolm's apology felt surreal, but also freeing. My stance was firm. I'd keep my evidence locked away as long as he stayed true to his word. Later that day, I drove to Toby's place. He answered the door in sweatpants, brandishing a spatula from the grill in his backyard. "Andrew, everything okay?" he asked when he saw my expression. I managed a half-laugh, stepping inside. Malcolm called, he apologized. Toby's eyes widened, spatula lowering. "What? Seriously? Did you record it, just in case?" I smirked. I didn't, actually, but he sounded genuine. Said counseling opened his eyes. He wants me to bury the hatchet and my evidence if they don't harass me again. Toby led me to the backyard, where the smell of grilled chicken hung in the air. Derek was there, flipping the meat, giving me a curious wave. I repeated the gist of Malcolm's call, and Derek let out a low whistle. Never thought I'd see the day, but if he's turning a corner, good for him. And for you. We ate a makeshift lunch, discussing local news and random jokes. Now and then the talk drifted back to Lydia and Malcolm, but none of us lingered on it. The heaviness in my life felt like it was dissolving. I realized I was enjoying a meal with my friends without tension gnawing at the back of my mind, worrying about Malcolm popping up. That evening, after I got home, Eleanor stopped by. She'd had a busy day at work, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, exhaustion in her eyes. I welcomed her in with a warm smile, telling her about Malcolm's apology. She listened carefully, then rested a hand on my arm. "I'm glad he finally owned up," she said softly. "How do you feel about it?" I shrugged, unsure. Relieved, mostly. Still cautious. But it's nice not to look over my shoulder. I paused. Counseling. Apologies. Maybe they're serious about turning things around. I can respect that. Eleanor nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. I hope Lydia's also letting go of whatever need she had to lie. After a moment, she added, "It's good for you, Andrew, to let that weight go. You deserve peace." I reached for her hand. Thanks for saying that. I guess I never realized how much of my energy I wasted anticipating the worst. Now, if they keep their distance, I can finally move on. She squeezed my fingers in silent empathy. We settled onto the couch, discussing weekend plans. Logan and Brianna would be at a friend's birthday party Saturday morning, so Eleanor and I thought about taking them to a local orchard in the afternoon. The conversation meandered into easy laughter, no tension about Malcolm or Lydia. The relief was palpable. Before leaving, Eleanor gave me a lingering embrace. "You've come so far from that guarded man I first met," she said, her cheek resting against my shoulder. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You helped me get here." A soft smile curved her lips, and then she slipped out into the night. I locked the door, leaning against it for a moment, mind drifting through the day's events. Malcolm's apology still felt unreal, but genuine. My own vow to keep the evidence buried was unwavering as long as they kept their word. In my bedroom, I opened the dusty box containing the USB drive and printouts my arsenal of proof. I ran my hand over it, then placed it back under some old files, untouched unless absolutely needed. The sense of finality was comforting, like sealing an old wound. It struck me then how much had changed in a short span. From standing in the crosshairs of Malcolm's rage to receiving his contrite call. Perhaps the counselor was right, facing your own responsibility can diffuse even the most hostile grudges. Meanwhile, Lydia's path remained murky, but at least she wasn't pulling me into it anymore. I slept well that night, no midnight jitters or half-formed nightmares. My life belonged to me again. The next morning, I rose early, made a full breakfast for the kids, and felt a calm optimism about the day ahead. Malcolm's attempt at amends was enough to let me stand strong on my own ground, no longer bristling for a fight. I had family, friends, and Eleanor, my own circle of support, and that was all I needed. 2 weeks of relative calm slipped by. In that time, I continued building my quiet happiness with Eleanor. We never forced any big declarations, just kept enjoying simple moments dinners at my place with Logan and Brianna, afternoon trips to the park. The kids gravitated to her naturally, even adopting little nicknames for her. My heart warmed whenever Brianna giggled, calling her Ellie. One evening, as we finished watching a family-friendly movie in the living room, Eleanor turned to me. "What do you think about a family weekend at Toby's cabin by the lake?" she asked. He mentioned it, said it could be fun. Logan's ears perked up. "Cabin? Lake? Can we fish?" He practically bounced on the couch cushions. Brianna chimed in, eyes glowing. "And maybe roast marshmallows?" Their excitement was contagious. I looked at Eleanor, smiling, then nodded at the kids. "If Toby's offering, sure, why not? We haven't had a getaway in ages." That's how I found myself packing the car a few days later, the trunk filled with fishing gear, sleeping bags, and groceries. Toby and Derek followed in their truck, loaded down with extra supplies. Eleanor rode with me, sitting up front, while Logan and Brianna animatedly talked about the possibility of seeing deer or campfires. The drive was scenic, winding roads flanked by tall pines. As we turned onto a gravel path leading to Toby's rustic cabin, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. The place was modest, a wooden structure with a wraparound porch perched near a placid lake. Derek parked his truck behind us, stepping out to greet us with a goofy grin. While Toby and Derek unloaded supplies, I walked down to the water's edge. Logan and Brianna raced ahead, squealing with excitement about the clear, mirror-like surface of the lake. Eleanor joined me, hooking her arm through mine. "I haven't been out here before," she said, voice hushed with awe. "It's so peaceful." I nodded. "Yeah, Toby inherited it from his uncle a while back. We come up here sometimes to unwind." We spent the afternoon settling in. Toby taught Logan how to tie a new fishing knot, while Derek and Brianna searched for kindling. Eleanor and I prepared a simple dinner of grilled hot dogs and fresh fruit. Laughter and chatter filled the air, unburdened by any looming tensions. It felt surreal in the best way, like a gift I never thought I'd receive again. After dusk, we gathered around a small fire pit by the lake, the flames casting dancing shadows on our faces. Marshmallows sizzled over the fire, and Brianna giggled each time hers caught flame. Toby told a goofy ghost story that made Logan roll his eyes dramatically. I felt Eleanor's shoulder rest against mine, her warmth anchoring me to the moment. When the kids wandered off with flashlights to chase fireflies, Toby leaned toward me. "Man, it's good to see you like this, relaxed, happy," he murmured, keeping his voice low so they couldn't overhear. I shot him a grateful look. "Feels good. It's been a long road." Derek nodded in agreement, a faint smile under his baseball cap. Eleanor nudged me gently, eyes reflecting the firelight. "Who knew your circle of friends was so entertaining?" Toby puffed his chest. "Entertaining is my middle name, Miss Ellie." We all burst into laughter, easy and unforced. Soon the kids returned, Brianna tugging on Derek's sleeve, Logan challenging Toby to a nighttime fishing attempt. The evening drifted into a joyous haze of conversation, the hiss of the fire and the gentle lap of lake water. Later, once the kids had settled in bunk beds inside the cabin, Eleanor and I slipped out onto the porch. The moonlight glinted off the lake, a silver sheen stretching across the water. We leaned against the porch railing, side by side, letting the chirping crickets serenade us. "I love seeing you in dad mode," Eleanor said softly, tracing her fingers along my arm. "Logan and Brianna are so comfortable around you and around me, which is surprising but wonderful." I took her hand, lacing our fingers. "They're resilient kids, and you've been amazing with them. They sense genuine kindness." She gazed at me, expression turning thoughtful. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked, voice gentle. "Like after all you've been through, do you feel ready to imagine something more permanent?" A flutter of emotion rippled in my chest. I glanced at the moonlit lake, recalling the chaos of the past year, the betrayals, the heartbreak. Then I looked back at Eleanor's open face. "I do think about it," I admitted. "Not every detail yet, but I've pictured well. More weekends like this, maybe a real family structure one day. You, me, the kids." A soft smile curved her lips, relief and affection mingling in her eyes. "I'm glad I'm not the only one imagining that. We don't have to rush, but it's good to know we're on the same page." I drew her closer, wrapping my arm around her waist. "You've helped me remember what normal can feel like," I whispered. "I'm grateful." She tilted her head, pressing a gentle kiss to my cheek. "I'm grateful for you too." We stood like that for a while, the porch quiet except for night sounds. My mind drifted to memories of mistrust, how I once believed any new connection would be a trap or a lie. But here, enveloped by Eleanor's calm presence, I felt an unshakable sense of hope. Inside the cabin, Toby's laughter boomed, probably at some joke Derek cracked. Logan and Brianna squealed, likely sneaking peeks at the phone games Toby's kids had. The nighttime hush was interspersed with bursts of life and friendship, reminding me I wasn't alone anymore. Eventually, we rejoined the group, picking up pillows and blankets for a final chat around the dying fire. The conversation meandered from old high school pranks to favorite childhood cartoons, with the kids chiming in about shows we'd never heard of. By the time the embers glowed faintly, we were all yawning, content to let exhaustion pull us to sleep. That night, I dozed off on a makeshift couch bed near the fireplace. Brianna curled up under my arm, and Logan sprawled on a sleeping bag. Eleanor nestled in a corner with a blanket, lulled by the crackling remains of the fire. I closed my eyes, listening to the gentle breathing of those around me. A deep well of gratitude spilled through me. My life had come a long way from heartbreak and suspicion. In the morning, we woke to a sunrise glinting on the water, a bright promise of another day. The kids demanded pancakes. Toby tackled the griddle with comedic flair, and Eleanor teased him about burning half the batch. I stood at the window, gazing out over the lake, heart full. This was the kind of memory I wanted to give my children. Carefree weekends, supportive friends, a future with someone I trusted. Maybe Lydia and Malcolm were part of the past, working out their issues far away. But right here, in the present, love had quietly found a way blooming between me and Eleanor, binding my kids, my friends, and me into a tapestry of mutual care. My once-guarded mind finally let that sink in, piece by piece. And as I ladled orange juice for the kids, I couldn't wipe the contented grin off my face. Weeks glided by, my life gaining an unprecedented calm. Eleanor and I grew closer, my children embracing her presence in our daily routines, family dinners, small celebrations of school achievements, occasional weekend outings. Toby and Derek teased me about how domestic I'd become, but their smiles told me they were genuinely happy for me. One brisk Saturday afternoon, I was at home debating which board game to play with Logan and Brianna when the doorbell chimed. Expecting either Toby or a delivery, I opened the door without a second thought. Shock rippled through me at the sight of Clarissa, my ex-wife, standing on the porch, hands folded. She wore a neatly pressed coat, her posture poised yet tentative. "Clarissa," I murmured, throat constricting. "This is unexpected." She offered a faint smile. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. "I'd like to talk if that's all right." Memories of our tense divorce, her affair, the legal battles, and her brief imprisonment flickered through my mind, but I forced myself to remain courteous. "Sure. Kids are in the living room. Let's step into the kitchen." She nodded, stepping inside. I guided her through the hallway, letting Logan and Brianna stay put with their board game, no sense causing them confusion yet. In the kitchen, I poured coffee, my hands trembling with old nerves. She stood by the counter, glancing around. "You've changed a few things," she remarked, a hint of nostalgia in her tone. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, life moves on." Then I gestured for her to sit at the small table. She complied, her gaze flicking to the photos of the kids pinned on the fridge. I remained standing for a moment, arms crossed, before finally taking a seat across from her. She inhaled deeply. "First off, I want you to know I'm not here to stir up old wounds. I realize we've both moved on. I have a new fiancé, Charles, and from what I hear, you're seeing someone too." Eleanor sprang to mind, her supportive smile, the warmth of her presence. I nodded. "Her name's Eleanor." The tension in my voice eased slightly. "We're happy," Clarissa exhaled. "I'm glad, truly. I heard bits and pieces from mutual friends. I also heard about the fiasco with Lydia and Malcolm." Her lips twisted in sympathy. "I'm sorry you went through that." A small shrug was all I managed. "I survived. Actually, things have settled. They're in counseling. I'm free." She offered a genuine look of relief. "Good. You deserve peace." Then she tapped her fingernails lightly on the table, hesitation in her eyes. "I came here because I'm engaged to Charles, as I said, and I'd like to get your blessing to include our kids in the wedding. I want them to be comfortable, to know you're okay with it." My heart twinged. I remembered how we once shared a life, how our children were the center of that life before everything fell apart. "Logan and Brianna's happiness is the priority," I said. "If they want to be part of your ceremony, I won't stop them." Clarissa's shoulders sagged in relief. "Thank you. I was afraid you'd hold a grudge. I know how badly I messed up." Sipping my coffee, I studied her face. The bitterness I once felt was surprisingly absent. Maybe time had worn down the sharp edges of my resentment. "I'm not the same person I was back then," I told her quietly. "I won't pretend it was easy to forgive, but I have a life now that doesn't revolve around old anger." She smiled, tears glinting at the corners of her eyes. I'm happy for you. And it's good you found someone. She fiddled with a ring on her finger, a modest band, presumably from Charles. Do you think I could meet her? Eleanor, I mean. Just to close the circle. No awkwardness around the kids. I hesitated, recalling how the children had gone through enough emotional storms. But part of me recognized that if our families were to coexist, especially for Logan and Brianna's sake, having Clarissa and Eleanor on neutral terms might be a good step. We can arrange that, I said. Let me talk to Eleanor first. Clarissa nodded gratefully. She glanced at the clock on the stove, likely realizing time was slipping by. Thank you, she repeated, standing. I really appreciate it. As I walked her to the door, a swirl of old memories washed over me. The early days of our marriage, our children's births, the collapse that followed. But there was no sting now, just an echo of what once was. She paused on the threshold, offering a final soft smile. It's good to see you strong, Andrew, she said. I'm sorry I ever doubted your resilience. I replied with a faint smile of my own. Take care, Clarissa. The door clicked shut behind her. I exhaled, leaning against it for a moment. Logan's voice from the living room broke the quiet. Dad, who was that? Your mom, I called back, stepping into view. We just talked a bit about her wedding. Brianna's eyes widened, half in surprise. Really? Are we invited? I gave a gentle nod. Yes, sweetie. But it's up to you if you want to be part of it. They both exchanged curious looks. I could see the wheels turning in their young minds. We'll figure it out, I added reassuringly, ruffling Logan's hair. Later that evening, I texted Eleanor about Clarissa's visit. She responded with immediate support. I'd be happy to meet her if it helps. Let's all talk soon. Relief welled up in me, grateful for Eleanor's maturity. The next weekend, we set up a brief meeting at a neutral spot, a local cafe. Clarissa arrived with Charles, a tidy, mild-mannered man in a neatly pressed shirt. I introduced Eleanor, who greeted Clarissa with a calm handshake and a warm smile. The conversation started awkward, but soon found an easy flow. Charles seemed polite, praising the kids' manners from the few times he'd met them. Clarissa, noticeably subdued, inquired about Eleanor's background, her job, small talk about local restaurants. I observed them, feeling an odd but welcome sense of closure. We weren't rehashing the past. We were focusing on the present, on how to make the children comfortable in both households. Halfway through, Clarissa gently apologized to Eleanor for any residual tension. Eleanor accepted it graciously, stating she only wanted a peaceful environment for everyone. We parted ways with polite goodbyes. No fireworks, no hidden barbs, just four adults choosing a path of minimal drama for the kids' sake. As Eleanor and I walked away, I slipped my arm around her, heart lightened by how seamlessly she'd navigated that tense dynamic. That wasn't so bad, she remarked, leaning into me. Your ex is more humble now. I nodded. She's grown, I guess, and so have I. My mind flashed to how bitter I'd once been, but that bitterness had no place in the life I was building. When we got home, I told Logan and Brianna how the meeting went, assuring them they could be part of their mom's wedding if they chose. They seemed intrigued, not apprehensive, progress. With that, a door closed on the old resentments, leaving space for acceptance. As I tucked them in that night, I thought about the transformations swirling around. Lydia and Malcolm confronting their own problems, Clarissa finding a new stable relationship, and me forging ahead with Eleanor. None of it erased past wounds, but it felt like the painful chapters had led to a tapestry of second chances. Later, Eleanor and I shared a quiet moment on my front porch. The moon rose high, illuminating the quiet suburban street. I took her hand, thankful she'd seamlessly fit into not just my children's life, but into the fragile coexistence with my ex, too. She caught my eye, a gentle question in her gaze. You okay? I sighed contentedly. More than okay. I'm at peace. Eleanor's smile widened. That's all I wanted for you from the start. In the hush of the evening we stood there, appreciating a future unburdened by old grudges. Clarissa's changed life had come full circle to this moment, and I was no longer haunted by her betrayal. The final piece of closure slid into place, allowing me to breathe freely. Tomorrow might hold new challenges, but for now, the scars of the past felt distant, a reminder of how far we'd all come. When I was younger, I thought I'd measure success by how smoothly life ran, no bumps, no friction, just stability. After everything that happened, the betrayals, the confrontations, the heartbreak, I've come to realize success is more about growing stronger through each trial. And that conviction fueled me in ways I never anticipated. It started with a single phone call on an ordinary Wednesday. I was at my desk in the museum's quiet research office, sipping my usual black coffee. My phone buzzed an unknown number. Half expecting yet another glitch with the shipping company, I answered in a clipped tone. Instead, it was an official from a prominent maritime institution across the country. They'd heard about my exceptional acquisitions and wanted me to collaborate on a new display focusing on rare naval artifacts. My heart thudded with excitement. Usually, we were the ones petitioning bigger museums for joint exhibits. Now, it was reversed. They'd found me through word of mouth. I arranged a meeting to discuss the details. The voice on the other end sounded enthusiastic, praising what they'd heard about my museum's recent expansions. When I hung up, I stared at the phone, realization settling in. I'd quietly redefined my role here, using my intelligence and connections to secure unique pieces. People were paying attention. During lunch, I told Toby the news. We stepped away from our usual sandwich shop to walk along the riverside, the water shimmering under midday sun. Toby slapped me on the back with pride. "Man, you're on a roll," he said. "After all that chaos, look at you, someone's courting you for a major collab." I grinned, swirling my iced tea. "It feels surreal," I admitted. "I never aimed for recognition. I just wanted to protect the museum's legacy." Another memory flickered, gathering evidence, logging everything meticulously when my life was under threat. That same tenacity had spilled into my professional world, apparently in a positive way. I found it ironic. Once Toby and I parted, I returned to my office. Stacks of old submarine logs and maritime diaries greeted me, but now I saw them differently, as keys to bigger opportunities. I stayed late, drafting proposals for how our museum and the major institution could collaborate. My boss, Mr. Chambers, peered in, looking astonished to find me so immersed. "Burning the midnight oil?" he teased, though he sounded proud. "If you need more resources, research interns, budget allocations, let me know." His support only fueled my momentum. By the time I drove home, dusk had settled, painting the sky in lavender hues. Eleanor was waiting in the living room with Logan and Brianna, the three of them playing a board game. When I walked in, they paused their laughter, beaming at me. I remembered a time not so long ago when I'd come home tense, expecting trouble around every corner. Now I felt light. Brianna leapt up, waving for me to join. "Dad, we're stuck on a tiebreaker question. What's the capital of Maine?" Miss Eleanor says Augusta, but Logan guessed Portland." I ruffled her hair gently. "Eleanor's right," I replied, giving Logan a playful wink. He shook his head in mock defeat. Eleanor smirked, her auburn hair catching the lamp's glow. "See? Told you." Then she tilted her head at me. "You look happy. Something good happen at work?" I settled onto the couch, explaining the phone call, the potential collaboration. A proud gleam lit her eyes. "That's amazing. I knew you were dedicated, but this is a step up, people seeking you out instead of the other way around." Logan nudged my arm. "Does that mean you'll be famous, Dad?" I laughed, messing up his hair. "Hardly famous, kiddo. Just recognized for some behind-the-scenes work. But I might have to travel more in the future." Brianna's face scrunched. "Travel? Will you be gone long?" I shook my head, pulling both kids closer. "Not too long and not for a while yet. Just enough to gather artifacts or present them. And we'll figure it out as a family." My glance flickered to Eleanor, who smiled softly. That night, after the kids were tucked in, Eleanor and I sat on the porch sipping chamomile tea. The air was cool, crickets chirping in the yard. She gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "I love seeing you this passionate," she murmured. "All those organizational skills you once used just to defend yourself are now shaping your career." I exhaled, reflecting on the path from heartbreak to newfound ambition. "It feels like I'm rewriting my own narrative," I admitted. Success used to mean not letting chaos devour me. Now it means forging something lasting at work, at home, With you. A quiet smile tugged at her lips. So do you think about bigger expansions in the future? Maybe new positions? Bigger roles? I shrugged, though my pulse quickened. Possibly. Mr. Chambers hinted at me stepping into a lead curator role if the partnership goes well. A thrill flitted through me. But that means a lot more responsibility. Eleanor sipped her tea, gaze thoughtful. I think you can handle it. You've handled far worse. Her confidence in me felt like a soft undercurrent, steadying my worries. We chatted about the kids' schedules, about Toby and Derek's next barbecue, but my mind kept circling back to that phone call, the notion that I might stand at the brink of a new professional chapter. It was thrilling, yes, but also sobering. I had to ensure I didn't shortchange my family in the process. When Eleanor headed home, I found myself lingering on the porch. The moon hung low, a glowing crescent. I closed my eyes, recalling how turmoil once defined my nights. Now I had purposeful days helping the museum flourish, planning a stable future, sharing laughter with my children, forging a deep bond with Eleanor. Each piece of my life fit together in a mosaic I never expected. Inside, I glanced at a framed photo on my desk, an older snapshot of me in the early museum days, back when stress lines creased my face from dealing with personal chaos. I traced a finger over the glass, a silent vow to keep moving forward. My phone chimed with a final email notification. The Maritime Institution confirming next week's virtual conference to hammer out details. I shot back an enthusiastic response. Then I set aside electronics, letting the hush of the house envelop me. The kids' soft breathing drifted from their rooms. A wave of gratitude washed through me. I was no longer that man braced for the next betrayal. I'd confronted the storms both from Clarissa's betrayal and Lydia's manipulation, and emerged not unscathed, but stronger. My success, redefined, was about building, not just surviving. I climbed into bed, a contented warmth settling over my chest. The future felt vast and open, no longer overshadowed by drama or fear. If my new role meant traveling to other museums, connecting with scholars worldwide, so be it. I'd do it with integrity. The same meticulous approach that once kept me safe in darker times. Now, it kept me motivated in brighter times. As sleep tugged at me, I pictured a grand exhibit showcasing the submarine diaries I'd once guarded so protectively. People from across the country marveling at their historical significance, not knowing the personal battles I'd fought to remain standing. Maybe that was my quiet legacy, turning painful lessons into something that benefited others. The notion soothed me, pulling me into a gentle dream where each artifact told a piece of a larger, hopeful story. A few weeks after the museum collaboration kicked off, my calendar looked more crowded than ever. Video calls with curators, early morning artifact inspections. Despite the busyness, I carved out weekend time for my kids and Eleanor, determined not to let professional growth overshadow what mattered most. One bright Saturday, we'd all gathered at a bustling park. Toby and Derek brought their families too, turning it into a mini picnic. Eleanor, Logan, and Brianna were mid-laughter by the swing set, while Toby flipped burgers at a rickety grill. Derek and I hovered nearby, passing out paper plates and teasing Toby about his questionable cooking technique. "You want yours medium? Well, or Toby burnt," Toby joked, waggling the spatula. We all chuckled. It felt good, simple camaraderie. No tension lurking. Midway through the meal, Brianna beckoned me over to the picnic blanket. She and Logan had a question, they said, eyes shining. Eleanor stood by, a slight blush creeping into her cheeks. "Dad," Logan began, fidgeting with a soda cup, "we were wondering, do we have to call Miss Eleanor Miss... I mean, she's kind of like part of the family now, right?" Brianna chimed in eagerly. "Yeah, we love her. She's basically here all the time anyway." Eleanor let out a soft laugh, brushing her hair back. I sank to a crouch beside them, heart drumming. "Well," I said slowly, glancing at Eleanor's expression. She looked both touched and nervous. "You can call her what you feel comfortable with," I offered. "We haven't made anything official, but we are serious about being together." Logan nodded, face lighting up. "Then we can say Aunt Eleanor or just Eleanor. Or maybe something else." He peeked at her shyly. "We don't want to be disrespectful." Eleanor crouched too, reaching out to put a gentle hand on Brianna's shoulder. "Hey," she said quietly, "I'd be honored if you just used my name. if that's what you want. Or even Aunt Ellie. Whatever feels right. Her eyes flickered with emotion. Thank you for thinking of me as family. My throat tightened. Scenes from my old life, Clarissa's affair, Lydia's manipulations flickered, yet none of them overshadowed the warmth of this moment. I placed my hand over Eleanor's. We are a family, I murmured, feeling the words resonate. We can figure out the titles as we go. Logan grinned, satisfied. Brianna beamed at Eleanor, the nickname Ellie probably swirling in her mind. I sensed a subtle shift like a puzzle piece clicking into place. The day continued with casual chatter, Toby and Derek trading jokes about me becoming Mr. Domestic. But beneath their teasing, I saw pride in their eyes, relief that I'd found stability at last. Toby elbowed me at one point, muttering, "Aren't you going to make it official with Eleanor soon?" I just smirked, rolling my eyes. Little did Toby know, I'd been thinking about that more than I cared to admit. That evening, as the sun dipped low, we returned home. After the kids went to bed, Eleanor and I shared a quiet hour on the living room couch, sipping tea. She leaned her head on my shoulder, voice hushed. "They want me to be part of the family," she murmured, a contented smile tugging at her lips. "That's more than I ever expected." I stroked her hair gently. "They've grown so attached, and so have I admitted. You've brought something stable and caring into their lives." She shifted, catching my gaze. "I feel the same way. With you, with them, it's not just dating. It's building a future." A slight tremor entered her voice. "Does that scare you?" I exhaled, considering. "It used to, but not anymore. I won't lie. I do think about formalizing us as a real unit. Maybe marriage down the line." My chest thudded at the admission, the words a quiet vow. "But I don't want to rush you." Her eyes gleamed with unshed emotion. "Andrew, if anything, you're the one who's been cautious." "I'm all in whenever you're ready." A soft hush enveloped us, the lamp's glow casting soft shadows. For a moment I recalled the swirling anxieties of the past, fear of betrayal, reluctance to trust again. Now all I saw was the woman who'd stood by me, honest and patient. "Maybe sooner than you think," I whispered, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. Over the next few weeks, that conversation lingered in the back of my mind. Between museum tasks and children's routines, I found myself checking out ring designs online, scouting possible ways to propose that felt personal and real. Toby sniffed out my intentions, cornering me in the museum foyer one afternoon. "So, you gonna pop the question?" he demanded with a mischievous grin. "Need moral support or an elaborate plan?" I laughed, shutting my office door to hush him. "Easy, man. I'm just looking. No big show required. I'd like something private, meaningful." Toby nodded, clearly excited but respecting my caution. Even Derek got wind of it, offering to help plan something epic. I politely declined. I didn't need fireworks or a crowd, just sincerity. Meanwhile, the kids were oblivious, though they did notice me rummaging through drawers and old keepsakes. "Dad, are you searching for treasure or something?" Brianna teased one evening. "Something like that," I teased back, heart hammering with anticipation. In the midst of all this personal planning, my professional life continued to bloom. The museum collaboration soared, the other institution praising my thoroughness. Mr. Chambers hinted at an upcoming press event to announce the partnership. I recognized I was on the cusp of a major career breakthrough, but none of it overshadowed the quiet longing in my chest to officially unite my family with Eleanor. One crisp Saturday morning, I decided the time was right. I woke early, anxiety and excitement dancing in my stomach. The kids were still asleep, the house silent except for the faint hum of the heater. I'd planned a simple but heartfelt approach, a relaxed breakfast at our favorite lake spot, the same place Toby once took us, the memory of calm waters fresh in my mind. I stepped into the hallway, phone in hand, texting Toby to confirm he'd watch Logan and Brianna for a couple hours. He replied with an enthusiastic thumbs up. Next, I quietly roused Eleanor with a gentle nudge, whispering that we needed to drive somewhere special. She blinked sleepily but trusted me. We left the kids dozing, Toby arriving soon after. Eleanor and I set off in my car, the early sun washing the sky in pale gold. She asked no questions, just sipped her coffee. My pulse raced. 15 minutes later, we arrived at the lake, morning mist curling over the water like a soft blanket. We took a short walk along the shoreline, the only sounds our footsteps and distant bird calls. I stopped near a cluster of rocks, hearts pounding so loudly I thought she'd hear it. She turned to me, curious. I cleared my throat, reaching into my jacket pocket for a small velvet box. The words tumbled out, trembling. "Eleanor, you came into my life when I was lost in anger and distrust. You showed me honesty, healed my family, and gave me something I never thought I'd have again, hope. I want to build a real future with you. Will you marry me?" Her eyes widened, tears glinting in the corners. A shaky smile spread across her face. "Yes," she breathed. 1,000 times yes. Relief and elation washed over me. I slid the ring onto her finger, a simple design but meaningful, glinting in the early sunlight. She gazed at it, then at me, eyes shining with tears. I pulled her into a gentle kiss, warmth blooming in my chest. The hush of the lake embraced us, nature bearing witness to a vow that felt like destiny. Hand in hand, we strolled back to the car, the morning unfolding like a promise. My phone buzzed with Toby's inquiring text. "Well?" I grinned, fired off a single thumbs up and heart emoji, ignoring how corny that felt. On the ride home, Eleanor rested her head on my shoulder. "I can't wait to tell Logan and Brianna," she whispered. "We're truly going to be a family, aren't we?" I pressed a kiss to her hair. "We already are," I said, voice thick with emotion. Back home, Toby was in the kitchen with the kids, helping them with cereal. The moment we walked in, Brianna noticed the ring and gasped, Logan's eyes widening. Eleanor and I exchanged a nod. Then I announced, "We're all going to be a family for real. Eleanor said yes to marrying me." Cheers erupted, Toby whooping, Brianna squealing, Logan bouncing on his toes. My chest felt full to bursting as I realized how simple and profound a gesture it was to unite. After so many storms, we'd found a safe harbor, and I wasn't sailing away from it. The weeks following our engagement spun in a blur of joyful chaos. Between wedding planning, the museum's upcoming gala for our partnership, and daily life with the children, I felt like I was juggling a dozen spinning plates, except this time, the plates were exciting, not anxiety-ridden. First came the question of when and where to tie the knot. Toby insisted we do something at the lake cabin, but Eleanor and I leaned toward a low-key ceremony in a local garden. Derek, ever the jokester, proposed a comedic backyard barbecue wedding. We politely declined, though we laughed at the mental image of us saying vows amid burger smoke. We settled on a date a few months away. Enough time to coordinate, but not so long that we'd get lost in never-ending preparations. Eleanor wanted a simple dress. Nothing fancy. "I want the focus to be on us, not elaborate decor," she told me with a soft smile. "Besides, the kids' excitement is more important than any flourish." Meanwhile, the museum demanded attention too. Mr. Chambers cornered me one afternoon, brimming with enthusiasm. "Andrew, the big gala's next week. I want you front and center, don't be shy about it." He clapped my shoulder. "You're the driving force behind this collaboration." I swallowed a surge of nervous energy. Public events weren't my favorite, but I recognized their value. So I poured myself into finalizing the gala's plans, who'd present the artifacts, how we'd display the newly acquired submarine diaries, what speeches needed to be delivered. In my quieter moments, I realized I was using the same diligence I once reserved for protecting myself from betrayal, only now it advanced my passion for maritime history. One evening, I spread sketches of the gala layout on the dining table at home. Logan and Brianna hovered, intrigued by the diagrams. Brianna pointed at a drawing of a small stage. "Dad, are you going to talk in front of all those people?" I exhaled. "Yes, sweet pea, I have to give a speech about the artifacts and what they mean." My chest tightened with a mix of nerves and pride. Logan grinned, nudging my side. "You can do it. Just think of it like telling a cool story like you do for us." I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, something like that." Eleanor joined us, scanning the sketches with interest. "This is going to be a milestone for you, isn't it?" she said, voice laced with admiration. "Publicly recognized for your expertise." A flush heated my cheeks. "I guess so. You'll be there, right? I need moral support. She squeezed my hand. Try keeping me away. I'll be in the front row, cheering you on. As the gala approached, Toby and Derek teased me about wearing a suit. Ditch the museum polo for once, Toby joked. Look like a star. They even accompanied me to pick out a tailored jacket, something classy but not stiff. I'd never thought I'd care about fashion, but considering everything that had changed in my life, this felt like another symbolic step, presenting a confident new version of me to the world. The big night arrived with a swirl of excitement. The museum's grand hall shone under strategically placed lights. Elegant banners displayed images of historical submarines and old maritime maps. Guests in semi-formal attire mingled, sipping cocktails. I spotted Mr. Chambers greeting some VIPs at the entrance. My heart hammered as I scanned the crowd for Eleanor or my kids. Brianna found me first, peeking from behind Toby's legs, wearing a cute little dress. "Dad, you look handsome," she declared, eyes wide. Logan, in a neat shirt, nodded vigorously. Toby grinned, giving me a thumbs up. "Knock 'em dead, buddy." Then Eleanor stepped into view, wearing a simple but elegant gown. My chest tightened at how radiant she looked, a gentle smile curving her lips. She approached, resting a palm on my chest. "Ready?" she asked, her tone hushed but encouraging. I swallowed, nodding. "Ready." People trickled into a seating area arranged near the podium. My job was to open the ceremony with a brief overview of the collaboration's significance, then introduce the main speakers. As I stepped onto the small stage, adrenaline spiked, but I forced myself to steady, remembering Logan's advice. Just tell a story. So I did. I explained how these artifacts spoke of courage at sea, how diaries penned by sailors decades ago carried whispers of their struggles and triumphs. My own voice found a natural rhythm, fueled by genuine passion. Now and then, I glimpsed Eleanor's face in the crowd, her eyes shining with pride. Toby and Derek sat near the kids, Toby giving me an exaggerated wink that made me stifle a grin. Applause followed my introduction, echoing through the hall. I exhaled, stepping aside as the guest speaker took over. Sinking into a chair next to Eleanor, I felt her hand slip into mine, giving a small squeeze. "You were fantastic," she whispered, leaning close. The rest of the gala flowed smoothly: presentations, artifact unveilings, polite mingling. Once free from official duties, I joined Eleanor by an exhibit case showcasing the submarine logs I'd helped acquire. I traced a finger along the glass, recalling how meticulously I'd documented my personal ordeal. There was a symmetry to it, archiving old stories so no one could twist them, just as I'd done with my own life's evidence. Near the end of the night, Mr. Chambers took the mic again, praising my dedication. He beckoned me onto the stage for a final bow. It felt surreal accepting applause for doing what once was overshadowed by personal strife. As cameras flashed, my gaze drifted to Eleanor, Toby, Derek, and my kids, who clapped with beaming smiles. A wave of emotion swelled in my chest. This was a milestone indeed, not just for my career, but for the life I'd rebuilt. After the last guest trickled out, the museum staff tidied up. Toby cornered me by the refreshment table, grinning. "You realize you're not that shy, paranoid guy anymore, right? The Andrew from a year ago would never be so at ease." I chuckled, patting his shoulder. "Guess I've grown, and I had good friends to push me." Derek nodded in agreement, handing me a leftover bottle of sparkling juice. We toasted quietly, the three of us in a corner of the hall, feeling the electric afterglow of success. Eleanor appeared, Logan and Brianna trailing behind. "Ready to head home?" she asked, a gentle smile curving her lips. I nodded, stepping forward to place a kiss on her cheek. The kids hopped excitedly, wanting to talk about the event and how cool it was to see me on stage. In the car ride back, I let them chatter, gazing at the city lights slipping past the windows. A milestone, indeed. I was no longer haunted by the ghosts of a painful divorce, or Lydia's deceit, or Malcolm's fury. Instead, I stood as a father, a partner, and a recognized professional, forging achievements that resonated beyond the walls of my past. That night, after the kids fell asleep, Eleanor and I sat on the sofa, exhaustion and contentment mingling. She leaned against me, voice low. Today was incredible. You were incredible. Couldn't have done it alone, I replied softly, pressing a tender kiss to her temple. She let out a blissful sigh, nestling closer. The house was quiet, save for the distant hum of the fridge. My thoughts drifted to the upcoming wedding, the synergy of family life, and the quiet pride simmering in my chest. This was how life was meant to be: victories shared, burdens lifted, new chapters opening one after another. As I switched off the living room lamp, a sense of gratitude washed over me. The milestone tonight wasn't just professional, it was personal, affirming that I'd learned to trust again, to strive again, to love again. A deep breath, a final glance at Eleanor's contented expression, and I let my eyes close, feeling the day's triumph settle into my bones. The wedding was a small affair, exactly what Eleanor and I both wanted. We chose a serene garden on the outskirts of town, lush with greenery and blooming flowers. The day dawned crisp and sunny, a gentle breeze making the leaves dance overhead. No one wore elaborate suits or gowns. It was all about comfort and closeness, just close friends, family, and a scattering of local acquaintances. I stood near a simple arch adorned with fresh blooms, my heart pounding but calm at once. Toby and Derek flanked me, Toby fidgeting with a tie he rarely wore, Derek cracking a quiet joke about not tripping on the grass. Logan and Brianna waited off to the side, Brianna holding a small basket of flower petals, Logan clutching 2 rings in a little box. My chest squeezed with affectionate pride. Then music drifted through the air, and Eleanor appeared at the far end of the garden path. She wore a flowing, understated dress, her hair pinned with a few delicate flowers. She looked breathtaking, not just in a physical sense, but in how genuinely at peace she seemed. Her eyes found mine, shining with tears. I had to remind myself to breathe. Time stretched strangely as she walked toward me, each step echoing years of heartbreak and healing. When she finally reached my side, we clasped hands, exchanging grateful smiles. The officiant, a warm-voiced local friend, began the brief ceremony with a nod to the journey we'd both taken. I felt Toby's encouraging gaze on my back, Derek's proud grin, and the kids shifting with excitement. Eleanor and I had written our own vows. Mine spilled out with trembling honesty about how she'd mended my trust, how she gave me and my children a sense of wholeness we feared we'd lost. Her words mirrored mine, describing how our bond grew from honesty, from shared struggles, from quiet acceptance of each other's scars. A hush settled over the garden, the audience drawn into our sincerity. When we slid the simple bands onto each other's fingers, Eleanor's ring modest, reflecting our preference for substance over show, I felt the final piece of my old life click into perspective. This wasn't about forgetting the betrayals or the storms. It was about embracing a tomorrow unclouded by them. As the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, cheers and applause erupted from the gathering. Brianna tossed flower petals in the air, giggling, while Logan punched the air triumphantly. We shared a gentle kiss under the arch, laughter mingling with the onlookers' cheers. The breeze rustled leaves overhead, nature itself seeming to bless the moment. Then we turned to face our guests, Toby pumping his fist, Derek whooping, Mr. Chambers clapping politely, Clarissa and Charles smiling from a respectful distance, and a smattering of old museum colleagues. For a brief second, I caught Clarissa's gaze, a soft smile on her lips. She mouthed, "Congratulations," and I nodded, a quiet understanding passing between us. Afterwards, we moved to a reception area by a small fountain, where Toby and Derek served homemade dishes. It felt more like a relaxed picnic than a formal wedding meal, exactly what we'd envisioned. The kids ran around, occasionally dashing back to sample finger foods. Friends came up to congratulate us with hugs and well wishes. Eleanor and I must have said thank you 100 times, but each one felt sincere. At some point, Toby clinked a spoon against his glass. "If I may," he announced, drawing attention. "Let me toast my friend Andrew and his bride, 2 people who've proven that second chances and real love can overcome even the craziest obstacles." He winked at me. We all remember how Andrew used to be a bundle of nerves, but look at him now, practically glowing. Gentle laughter rippled. I rolled my eyes playfully, then raised my own glass. "Thanks, Toby. Couldn't have done it without you and Derek, and of course my kids, for reminding me daily what I'm fighting for." I turned to Eleanor, voice thick with emotion. And you, for being my partner in truth, not illusions. People clapped, drinks were sipped, and we slipped back into conversation. Eleanor's hand remained firmly in mine through it all. I noticed Clarissa lingering near the fountain, so after a while, I guided Eleanor over to say hello. Clarissa introduced Charles, who gave a polite nod. Clarissa extended a hand to Eleanor. "I'm truly happy for both of you," she said quietly. "I know how far Andrew's come, and you've been a big part of that." Eleanor squeezed her hand, a gentle acceptance shining in her expression. "We're all building new futures, right?" Clarissa smiled with relief, and in that moment, the last bits of tension between us dissolved. Eventually, as afternoon turned to twilight, guests began filtering out, leaving behind a smaller circle of close friends and family. Toby fiddled with a portable speaker, setting a casual ambiance. Brianna and Logan danced around, giggling as Toby taught them clumsy moves. Derek attempted a comedic line dance, garnering laughter. The horizon glowed with the final hues of the sun, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Eleanor pulled me aside near a blooming rose bush, away from the remaining crowd. She traced a finger along my newly donned wedding band, eyes brimming with tenderness. "We did it," she murmured. "Together." I cupped her cheek, the soft hush of evening wrapping us in a private cocoon. "Yes, now we step forward, no baggage, just lessons learned." She leaned up, pressing a slow, gentle kiss to my lips. The background chatter faded, replaced by the thud of my heartbeat and her warmth. A sense of completeness washed over me unlike anything I'd felt before. This was the culmination of every wound, every ordeal, and every quiet triumph. From shattered trust to love that promised stability for my children, for me, for us. As we rejoined the group, Toby offered one last toast, raising a plastic cup high. "To the bride and groom, may your future be a long, happy voyage." Everyone echoed the cheer, plastic cups clinking, laughter punctuating the evening air. We lingered until the sky deepened, Logan and Brianna yawning dramatically. Toby and Derek helped clear the final plates. Clarissa and Charles waved goodbye, heading home. Before departing, Clarissa gave me a brief hug light, but a genuine gesture of goodwill. I realized how far we'd come, no bitterness hanging between us. Soon, only Toby, Derek, and a few stragglers remained. The kids dozed in the corner, exhaustion overtaking their excitement. I gathered them gently while Eleanor thanked everyone for their help. Under the soft glow of lanterns, we packed up, hearts full. In the car ride home, just me, Eleanor, and two sleeping kids quiet settled in. We gazed at each other, hands intertwined over the console. A sweet calm suffused my chest. Tomorrow would mark the start of daily life as an official family, but in our hearts, we'd already been one for a while. Back home, after carrying Logan and Brianna to their beds, Eleanor and I stood in the dimly lit hallway. She brushed my hair back softly. "Ready for this next chapter, husband?" My breath caught at the word husband. I smiled, heart fluttering. "More than ready, wife," I replied, voice warm with affection. We shared a knowing look, heading toward our room, hand in hand. As we switched off the lights, I inhaled deeply, reflecting on the journey that brought me here from betrayal and revenge to love and second chances. Embracing tomorrow meant cherishing each new sunrise, unafraid of the past. The shadows that once loomed large had diminished, replaced by the soft glow of a life built on honesty and trust. With that final thought, I closed my eyes, drifting into a peaceful sleep. A new day awaited our future brimming with promise and the quiet assurance that together we could face anything.